special meeting of the Parks and Rec Commission. Could we start with a roll call, please?
Chair Greenfield,
Here.
Vice Chair Brown,
Here.
Commissioner Cribbs, Commissioner Freeman,
Here.
Commissioner Kleinhaus,
Here.
Commissioner Oche,
Here, please.
Commissioner Wei.
Here.
Chair, that's 7 present.
Thank you. If there's any members of the public who would like to speak, please raise your hand or fill out a speaker's card. And I'm not seeing any right now. So we'll move forward with agenda changes, additions, and deletions. Any suggestions from anybody? Then we'll move forward with the first action item, approval of minutes from the May 2nd, 2023 Parks and Recreation meeting. Any comments from anyone, changes suggested? Without any changes, I'll look for a motion to approve the minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
And when during this meeting, it's probably most appropriate to abstain from the vote. Thank you. Go ahead.
Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Vice Chair Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Cribbs,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Kleinhaus,
Yes.
Commissioner Oche,
Yes, please.
Commissioner Wei.
Yes.
Chair, if you could address Commissioner Wei, please.
Sorry, I should have been on speaker on that. But probably want to abstain from the vote to be the most appropriate.
And I'll call again Commissioner Wei.
Abstain.
Thank you. Chair, that's a 6-0 vote with Commissioner Wei abstaining.
Thank you. Okay, next up is the city official reports, and look for the department report, please.
Good evening, Darren Anderson with Community Services Department. Trying something new today. We'll put this on a PowerPoint, see how it goes. Recruitment, we're still recruiting for the 2 assistant rangers and 1 open space technician position, and for the division manager for open space parks and golf. Recreation programs and events, middle school athletics program finishes up this week, and it was a successful season, providing opportunities for 1,171 middle school students in Palo Alto. CSD summer camp begins June 5th, and spots are still available to select camps. Please visit cityofpaloalto.org/enjoy online to see more about those. And at the last commission meeting, I had mentioned this Twilight Series concerts coming up, but I think it might be handy just so you can see them until we get to the dates. The 4th of July Festival and Chili Cook-Off returns this summer at Mitchell Park from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Staff are recruiting for Chili Cook-Off teams. It's always a bit of a challenge to find enough teams to compete. If anyone's interested, Sharon Eva, Community Services Manager, can be contacted for more information or visit our website, cityofpaloalto.org/July 4th. Project updates, the replastering project at Rinconada Pool. I was informed by the facilities staff, Public Works today, that there's just a couple minor things to wrap up, but the lap pool had opened up on May 10th. The skate park, I think this might have been mentioned, but just to reiterate where we last left off, staff is working on the parking analysis, and we're setting up the contract to have that parking analysis conducted for us. The 2850 West Bayshore project, the fencing for that project is up, and they plan on starting early next week. What they're waiting for is for the utilities department to certify the pipe that they're going to be putting in. And they believe that'll be ready to go and in hand next week. Again, approximately 2 to 3 weeks for the sewer installation, approximately 6 weeks for the park restoration. And by that, I mean the reestablishment of the turf that will have been disturbed. Hopkins Park, you might recall at our retreat, several residents spoke to the commission and mentioned a challenge that they were having. I just wanted to let you know CSD staff is involved. We'll be meeting with the residents. We're working on scheduling a meeting with them next week. That'll include police department and representatives from the city manager's office. We talked also at our retreat about capturing our capital projects and maybe have this on an ongoing basis so you can see the status. I don't have the most, not all of these have updates on them. Some of them do, and I'll walk you through on the few that I do have. So the Baylands Boardwalk Piling Repair Project, the meeting with the regulatory agencies in June is tentatively scheduled, and we'll be discussing repair options, the permit process for what that would look like, et cetera. The Baylands entry gate replacement, I think that'll be an early FY24 project in combination with CSD and Public Works working collaboratively. The Bulware Park Improvement Project, planning on construction will be this summer through fall 2024. Cameron Park Improvement Project, we're targeting early FY24. The Cubberley Field Restrooms Project, I know I'm sure you would like, I would like as well, an idea on when the thing will go in. When's our installation date? I don't have that yet. Well, as soon as I do, I'll make sure to update this and share it with you. But the next step in the process is June 19th, council will approve the purchase of the restrooms. So on several of these, the next 5 or 6, I don't have a timeline or an update other than they're going to happen in FY24. And specifically on the Mitchell Park Dog Park project, the timing for that to go out to bid will be after the Cameron, Ramos, and Robles projects go out successfully to bid. We are having challenges with our bidding process. Some of these projects are being bid 2, even 3 times. Challenges are either not enough bidders, maybe we only get 1, or oftentimes the price is far outside our engineer's estimate and our funding. The Ramos Park project is one of those examples where we had to go out for a second bid and it didn't end up with the results we were hoping. So we're going to try something a little different in packaging it with another CIP, hoping we hit a monetary figure that maybe is more attractive to additional contractors. So that one will go out to bid with Robles. And then the Rinconada restroom project is tentatively scheduled for spring 2024. And Chair, that completes the department report.
Thank you, Darren. Love the new format. Thank you. I'm assuming that will be posted as a next to the agenda, or posted within the agenda. That'd be great to have every week or every month, and easy to refer to back to at a glance. So thanks for the work on that. Commissioners have questions for Darren?
I do. First of all, Darren, thank you so much for doing that. It's great, and I'm sure we're all really happy about that. How long does it take to do a parking study for the skate park?
I have never done one, but planning staff who had connected me with the consultant seemed to think it was relatively quick. I'm thinking a month or 2. I'll know more once I get this contractor on board and locked into a contract when I have got a schedule. And as soon as I do, I'll let you know.
And does it make a difference if you're studying the traffic in the summer pattern as opposed to the fall and winter when the leagues are in session?
You know, I'm curious to know a little bit more about that, whether they need to
Okay.
see it or whether they've got data for our region that can be extrapolated for the whole time period. I'm not quite sure, but as soon as I learn more, I'll let you know.
Thank you. And I also appreciate your including the Hopkins Park situation. I was very troubled, as I'm sure everybody else was, about that. And it's nice to see that there's something going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Others? Nellis?
Yeah, thanks, Darren. I appreciate the format as well. You mentioned that I guess there's some issues with bidding on various projects. Could you kind of give a little bit more input on that? Is that something new? Is it a process that you guys are looking into? And what kind of changes are you thinking to implement to make that a better and faster process, I guess?
Yeah. It's a multifaceted issue. Part of the problem I'd say the last couple of years has been our purchasing department has been pushed to the limit with limited resources and lots of requests for putting things out to bid. So that process has been slower than I think we would like. And recently, I think they've dedicated more staff time to it and have a process that seems to be going a little bit quicker, which is great. The most recent struggle is more on the bidders, the end result, either not enough bids or bids that feel to staff as though maybe they don't really want the bid and they're giving this really high price to say, we'll see if they take it or not. That and just construction costs have gone up. So a combination of all those factors, I think, are resulting us in seeing bids that are much higher than we anticipated.
Is that more of a more recent? I guess, for bidders?
It seemed to be that maybe this was tied in the middle of COVID when the opportunities to get materials were so difficult and costs were going up, and it seems to have continued. So I don't know the full rationale. I'd hate to offer something that's really a guess, but I can say other departments have noticed the same thing. There are exceptions. Occasionally we're getting bids that are on or maybe even a little bit under the engineer's estimates. But more often than not, for my department, we're seeing much higher.
Quick question about the Bayland repairing in June. Do you expect ad hoc commissioners to be there to support you or to meet with the regulatory agencies?
Yeah, great question. I think for right now, it'll just be staff and then I'll update you. I think this is a kickoff meeting to broach the topic, get their initial feedback, and there'll probably be subsequent ones. And if at that time, I think it would be beneficial or you think it'd be really beneficial, we could have a conversation and see.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Others? Joy?
Thank you, Chair. Just to re-echo what Commissioner Cripps said, we really appreciate the new presentation, and I'm glad that something is happening about the Hopkins Park residents complaint. The last time we met, I think you mentioned, or someone may have asked about who tracks the programs on the Enjoy Online. And I think one of the reports or updates you gave mentioned that they still have programs. Are we able to tell how many? Because I know it's been pretty difficult getting my kids on some of the summer programs. So just curious to know who handles that, and then what the process will be if there's a long wait list. Are people able to see how long the wait list is or things like that?
Yeah, I apologize. I think I'm going to have to defer that one, and might even be easier if I connect you directly to the rec staff that lead it. It's Kayla Koga is one of our staff people, and offline I'll connect you to maybe, if that's all right. Okay.
Anyone else? I have a few questions. Great to hear the parking studies being done, but I share Commissioner Cripps' concerns about how the study is done. I know that, for example, some traffic studies in the city have actually been done over a single day, which is really not concerns about how representative it is and accurate. And look forward to getting information back to the commission on how that's being done. And would be great to have some feedback to the commission if possible, or at least to the ad hoc certainly before a decision is made on how to go forward with that. Great to hear the chili cook-off is returning. It's been a popular event for our community for many years now. It's also been a stress point for staff getting enough booths filled and participants. So I'm very interested in getting more information out to the commission on how we can raise awareness and do outreach to groups on this. I don't know if it's better for me to contact another staff member or to work through you, but I think it'd be helpful to get very specific recruiting details And also, I think it could be helpful to get a list of past participants the last 5 years or so, just to give commission members an idea of who participates, and that might help commissioners come up with ideas on who to reach out to. So I'll leave it to you to either do that outreach or ask me to do more on that.
Maybe I'll connect you via email directly with the person. I just want to verify.
Sure. Great. Thank you.
Will do.
Good to hear the West Bay Shore project is moving forward. And we'll look to get more information as it becomes available in terms of when it's appropriate to pursue park dedication of that parcel. And do you know what the gating item is on that?
Could you say that again?
What is the gating item on that we need to wait for before proceeding with park dedication?
I don't know yet. I just know that between the attorney's office, planning, and real estate, it wasn't ready per the last conversation I had. But they know I'm anxious and the commission is anxious, and that it's certainly something we will be pursuing. So they know it's on our agenda.
Let's be a squeaky wheel on that.
Yeah, will do.
And finally, on Bullware, the construction schedule that you presented is summer or fall 23 through fall 24. Could you just remind us of what the impact is to users of the park? So certainly the whole park isn't going to be closed for a year. Some things will be happening in stages. If you can give us some sort of a overview to the.
Yeah, I think I'll know more about the staging once we get the contractor on board and we have a pre-construction meeting and we talk through all those things. What do we need to close the whole site? Are we able to keep this portion open for how long? Those kind of details will be fleshed out at that point. We got the bids for that contract, so it should be coming fairly soon, but I don't know of a date yet. So as soon as I do, I'll let you know.
And communication on this will be through signage at the park and updates to the city website. Was there any direct outreach to local residents?
I think all three. I know Peter Jensen, the city landscape architect, had done a fair amount of public outreach, and I think he's got all the participants in those meetings and could be sending out emails to them to say, here's our timeframes and things like that. So I think it'll be all of those: signage, updates to the commission, webpage, and direct communication.
And certainly to the Ventura neighborhood group can extend the outreach. That's all I have. Do any other commissioners have any follow-up questions at this point? Yeah.
Only a follow-up suggestion that it's probably too soon this year, but next year, the commission should probably think about entering a chili cook-off team. It's lots of fun, and we could be the commission chili cook-offers.
That reminds me of, thank you, Ann. That reminds me of one more question. Will you be will the city be soliciting parks commissioners to be judges in the chili cook-off, which could be some conflict of interest if they're participating? I have done that in the past, and it's been fun, and it's been a little bit of a perk to get to not have to wait in line to taste the chili. That's definitely a plus. Anything else? Thank you. Okay, if any members of the public have would like to speak on any of the agenda items coming up, starting with the work plan, now's a good time to raise your hand or turn in a speaker card if you're with us in person. It's sparse out there this evening. We'll move forward with our first business item, which is our work plan, and really this is two parts. One is confirming the results of last year's work plan, or reporting back on our status of the work plan items that we listed last year. And we've already gotten a good start at this at our last meeting. So we'll start by reviewing that, and then we'll move on to this year's work plan. When I say this year, I'm referring to this fiscal year. We'll be referring to the work plan as the FY24 work plan. It's not exactly precise, but that's the nomenclature that we're going to use. Don't see any hands raised for members of the public who'd like to speak. So we'll start by jumping into the first part of this. I'll just for everybody's information, this is an action item. We will be voting on this. We'll be voting once at the end. So we'll be compiling everything that we'll be voting on into the draft work plan, which staff will be displaying and working on updating as we go along. Right on cue, thank you. So we'll start by reviewing. Well, let's go ahead and
On the top?
let's go ahead and look through the top real quick.
You
Just
bet.
as a quick refresher. Just scroll up a little bit. So the purpose of the parks is at the top of this display. And then everyone just read through this on their own just to real briefly. You can scroll up a little bit more, please. And keep going a little bit more. All right. Nothing too controversial here. Let's continue down. So the mission statement is the purpose of of our commission, and this is coming from the city municipal code, essentially. But our goal is we're an advisory body to city council on policy matters, and the areas of purview are open space, parks, golf division, and recreation division of the CFD. Let's go through prior year accomplishments now. I don't think we need to read through all of these out loud. I think what I think I'd like to do is go through each work plan item one at a time and ask the commission if anyone has any comments or change recommendations that they'd like to suggest for consideration. Start with the racket court policy. Any comments, questions? Okay. Moving on to rec projects and opportunities. Any comments or questions? Darren, do you have any feedback, any additional feedback in terms of the length of the accomplishments section?
I've been thinking about that. No, I don't yet. I did reach out to the clerk's office just to ask, but I didn't hear back in time for this one. So I know when we submitted the last one, after the commission had made its action, there were still minor tweaks they made to make it fit. So I think that may be the case this time around too.
Right. And is there any review opportunity on that for us?
In between the time we submit it to the clerk's office and it going live, possibly. Yeah.
I guess I'd request if you could have that sent to the chair and vice chair to
Yes.
review on behalf of the commission. So nothing on rec projects and opportunities. That includes the gym, wellness center, skate park, and First Tee partnership. About e-bike and electric conveyance device policy. And do you have a comment? Okay. How about if we jump forward a little bit? Does anybody have any comments on any of the items?
Yeah, I'm curious about the e-bike. Did we find a solution approved by city council?
So we did, as the item indicates, we did recommend a policy, and it was adopted by city council. And there's follow-up request from city council to continue further investigation on some items, and we'll cover this directly when we get to the bicycle e-bike work plan item for this year, which is really a direct follow-up based on the guidance and the direction from city council.
So there's no definite go or not go yet.
Excuse me?
There's no definite we're going to have e-bikes or not yet.
Prior to the commission action on the recommendation and the city council action, there was no official e-bike policy for the city.
Okay,
E-bikes were covered under city policies and more of a basket that addressed bicycles and other things. There was no specific e-bike policy, so we made a specific e-bike policy recommendation. There were different, it's different for parks versus open space preserves. And that's the limit of our purview. This doesn't address city streets and things like that, which are part of the transportation department
I see,
and
yeah.
outside our purview. But of course, e-bikes are prevalent and becoming more popular
yeah,
with
yeah,
time in our community.
yeah. Thank you.
I will say on the subject of e-bikes, I wasn't not really crazy about a lot of the language that was kind of popularized in the press in terms of an e-bike ban. But e-bikes are permitted in some places and they're not permitted in other places.
Yeah,
And there's a rationale for that, but it's not, to me, it's not as draconian as a ban suggests.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Why don't we continue scrolling through the list, please? So fundraising, urban forestry, and parkland dedication. Any comments on any of these?
On the fundraising page, there was a gap in what I printed out, and I see why now, because it needs to say webpage in there, and so it does, and so it's fine.
Great. Continuing to scroll down. And the CIP review as well. Okay. Then this will remain as is and will be part of the action, which we'll be voting on at the end of the evening. Darren, we might be able to get a little bit more vertical real estate if you click the little caret just to the right of the, there you go. Click on that. Yep. Okay. So we have 7 project / goals or 7 items on our work plan. These map directly to the 7 ad hocs which we've established, and each of the ad hocs have met since our retreat and submitted updates to staff, which were included in the packet. Darren, you have some track changes displayed in aqua or light blue, sea blue.
I can't explain the color of the track changes, but I can say that the ad hoc and I had discussed this, and we recognized that we inadvertently included part of a motion that didn't get approved by council. So we've track change removed these with the approval of the ad hoc after consultation with them.
So if you don't like the color, you can try opening it again, or someone else can, because the colors are not locked in Word. They are random and they are specifically not able to be specified. So you're off the hook on that. Okay. So what was included in the packet is what was submitted to staff before last Wednesday. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And the changes which we're seeing are changes that staff is suggesting, or these include also changes from some of the ad hocs as well?
In this particular example, staff and the ad hoc.
Right. And I support that change. Any suggestions about how we attack the discussions on this? Vice Chair?
I would just suggest that we go through the master plan one either first or before some of the other ones, just because that's an overarching one. I just think if everyone's okay with that, that might make sense to start with, even though it's not listed as goal one.
I would support that. That makes sense. Seems like a good place to start.
Agreed.
Okay, so we'll leave it as project goal number 3 because that's where it fits alphabetically, perhaps. Although Parks Master, anyway, sounds great. Okay, so this is the item that we spent a fair bit of time on during our retreat, talking about a kind of a 2-part process for the master plan review. And the first part is aimed to take up the next 6 months or so, roughly. And consistent with that, the timeline of this is set for the first 2 quarters of the fiscal year. Actually, one comment I wanted to make before we jump in is, I think it would be good as we go through these to try to standardize to the extent possible, standardize the nomenclature for the timeline. I think using fiscal year 24 as the timeline or specific quarters within it to be consistent, I think that's the most an accurate way to go. As far as resources, most of these require staff time. There's different terms that have been used to describe the amount of staff time, but I think if we standardize with low, medium, and high, or low, moderate, and high, low, moderate, considerable. I don't think any of the projects we're suggesting we're starting off by calling for substantial or great amount of staff time.
Can I ask a question? If you're talking about making it high, medium, and low, is that something that staff would make that decision about?
I think staff would have the final say on that. I think we're making a suggestion in terms of what we're projecting, and so we would look for staff's feedback to work on this together, I guess.
What's the normal sort of benchmark? Is it a couple hours of that time considered low, or what's the standard?
Darren?
Yeah, I'd say it's really variable depending on the work plan item. Maybe a good example of one that was greater degree of staff involvement and time spent would be e-bikes. And I'd say the same is true of the ad hoc committee, where we must have met 15, 20 times. It was really extensive in terms of number of meetings and the work on that, and others, far fewer meetings, far less staff time. So definitely highly dependent. And some of these evolve as you start in digging, and I think can change. So I think starting with what we think is reasonable in terms of staff, but both between the commission and staff coming up with an estimate, and then sometimes it'll change and we'll do our best to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've sort of felt staff are very burnt out and try to help out whenever we can. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, and while it's variable from ad hoc to ad hoc and work plan item to work plan item, in terms of what we're listing in our work plan, that it shouldn't be a variable scale. It should be a more consistent scale. So as far as if we were to look back on that work plan item, how would you specify the resources needed for that?
I'd say medium.
So that would be moderate staff time?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so we're probably talking about lower moderate staff time for the items. And then when we're not sure, it's low to moderate.
Yeah.
Okay. Also want to bullets and spacing for bullets, consistent font size, like we're a few variations on that, consistent use of city council as opposed to council, PRC as opposed to commission, these things. So I think we can do our best to get through this today and we can approve something and we can leave it to staff to clean up the document afterwards. We don't need to get too into the nitty gritty of that.
Going back to what you're suggesting for timeline. So some of those things, let's say if we're looking at something that we're working on for 2023 that might fall into 2024, how would you define that as, if you're saying fiscal year 24, right?
So fiscal year 24 starts on July 1st.
Okay.
So that gives us July 1st. through
Okay,
June
two,
30th.
and then when you say the quarter, you're talking about the quarter as to when that particular project or goal will be completed?
That's right.
Okay.
Well, that's actually a good question. When we talk about the timeline, is this the timeline for completion or is this the timeline for action? Which would also include completion. And I think we could probably interpret that however we wanted. So I think we can just kind of include that if it's something that's going to be done throughout the entire year, then it's just FY24. And if it's more specific, if it's something that's going to be completed sooner than that, then we can add the quarters in it.
Well, like the thinking of the e-bike, that's an ongoing initiative, right? That maybe doesn't have an end date. So you would just say fiscal year 24 for that, and then the next work plan will be continuing on.
Sure. Well, there may not be an end date specifically for all of our recommendation work on bicycle and e-bike policy, but the work plan items must be very specific in both the task and the timeline for work completion, so that these can remain ad hoc committees as opposed to standing committees.
Gotcha.
So we want to be very deliberate in specifying tasks that can be completed within a 12-month cycle, and also measurements of success that we can observe and tabulate. Any other questions? Any other suggestions on something else to standardize that I have not touched on? Okay. Well, let's hopefully everyone has had an opportunity to read through all of the project goals and all the details and develop some questions and comments in advance. This work plan item was developed by the Vice Chair and Commissioner Kleinhaus and myself. As we discussed in the retreat, it's the first step in reviewing, in taking a broad overview of our master plan, which we haven't done. It was developed in 2017. And so really what we're looking to do is kind of take a step back, dig through the master plan, make sure we understand the details well, hopefully reach out to some of the original architects of the master plan for additional details that might get some help reading between the lines, and develop understand what the scope of our project is, and come up with additional tasks that can be that are manageable within this term, within the coming fiscal year. So this is there's a full expectation that we will be adding an additional work plan, project, and goal within the next 6 months to do additional work, and those are really the items that are specified as the lower priority items. And so we'll do it. The idea is we would do a review. We would, as a priority item, also we would evaluate how the action plan can be used immediately to optimize the upcoming annual CIP process, since that is really one of the more time sensitive pieces within this. How do we get back on track at using that, or decide that it's not appropriate for us to use, but to evaluate it and come up with a recommendation. So those are the three priorities. And the measurements of success are preparing a report on the planning and implementation process, and take a look at the action plan and do whatever we need to do to optimize the upcoming CIP process consistent with the master plan, and to develop a new work plan item that we would agree on as a commission for additional work. Any other members of the ad hoc want to comment on this? Any questions from commission members? Any comments from staff, suggestions?
No.
Okay, so we're consistent. So that this is the timeline nomenclature we'll use, and low to moderate staff time. Okay. Shani, did you have a comment?
I'm just wondering if we're going to look at any gaps. I mean, maybe in the plan, in the master plan, there are sections that received a lot of attention and a lot of projects already happened or in process or in close future process, and some may have just fallen and didn't get any attention. And I'm not sure we captured it. Like looking at potential areas that are somewhat deficient, possibly. Maybe there are none. Staff would know better than I, but I'm just wondering.
Do you mean gaps that the plan has not accomplished or gaps that weren't in the plan to begin with, or both?
I'm not trying to write a new plan.
Right. And
I'm looking at gaps where the plan has some direction, policies, programs that should be implemented, but in the past few years, basically there's no progress.
right. I think we tried to capture that in the high part of the review of understanding the implementation of the plan, but perhaps if it needs to be clearer and more directly written, but that was the purpose of that high level review.
I think that's covered, that will be covered in the first bullet of the lower priority items.
Okay.
Detailed status review of projects and programs. I expect that we're going to be going through each of the projects and programs that are listed in the master plan and comment on what's happening with it. Completed, from not started to completed. And there's plenty of room in between there. Good question, though. Thanks. Anyone
Quick
else?
question.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. When I saw detailed status review, I felt it would be more high priority. I don't know. Just my thoughts.
So the thinking and putting it as a lower priority item is that's part of what will be outlined in terms of the scope of the more detailed review to do.
I think for this one, it's more like a phase 1, phase 2, rather than high and low, but we just sort of oriented it this way using the template.
And if you look at the measure of success, the last item on is a new master plan review, which is addressing the lower priority items. That's the intent here. So we're not actually looking to address any of the lower priority items as part of this work plan item. They're included here to provide direction or to provide insight into the direction we're going and the roadmap we're heading on. But this is all very important for all the commissioners to understand, because as we talked about before, we want to have the whole commission engaged and active on reviewing the regular updates from the ad hoc on this. Joy.
2 quick questions. Thank you, Chair. So if it's lower priority, does it mean it comes after the high priority is addressed? That's one. And then I know we talked about during the annual retreat, we talked about having the review of the recreation programs before this. So how does this all align?
That's an excellent question, and we'll need to, this is really the high level work plan item. It might be helpful to add phase one at the beginning of the high priority section and phase two before a comprehensive parks master plan. Maybe unbulleted phase one there.
Yeah, I have a similar question. Should we put timeline for phase one, high priority and low priority, phase two?
Yeah.
So we have a sense of,
So the timeline for the phase one items is the next 6 months.
okay,
Sooner if we can, but it will, we're not going to finish it
Yeah.
in the first quarter. We might finish early in the second quarter. And as soon as we finish it early in the second quarter, then we can start moving on to phase two.
right.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, indeed.
I think for lower priority, you should probably just do phase two colon and then have a comprehensive on the same line. Okay. So is this, obviously it's clear there's some questions about this to members of the commission. Is there something we should do on this item to make it the intent more clear to people who are reading this without the background and benefit of having been in a meeting discussing this? Maybe we want phase two to include in parentheses or to include something like about a new work plan item. A new work plan item, maybe you don't need parentheses. A new work plan item will specify a comprehensive master plan review. A new work plan item.
Is that, I don't know that we want to specify.
Will
It's
outline,
consider,
will outline,
yeah,
will outline,
something.
sure. Will outline. A comprehensive Parks Master Plan review, comma, which will okay. Does that help? Okay.
Can we do a potential new work item? I'm sorry.
No, well, sorry. I don't think there's any question that we're gonna come up with a new. So curt there. Oh, sorry. Under the upper right box where it says no, I think you can add master plan policy 2.g and 6.a. Two dot G and 6.a. And you can delete no. Great. Ready to move on? Okay, let's go back up to the top then.
Chair, is there a way that you ordered these, like 1, 2, 3, 4? Should not the review of master plan be the first goal?
I think
Maybe it
that's
doesn't
probably,
matter.
I think that's probably a good idea. They were ordered, I believe, in the order of the ad hoc.
The way they came
names.
in? Maybe.
But I think it probably makes sense to put that as one. And maybe for the time being, you just want to change the number on it one and you can do some cut and paste cleanup on it later.
It implies prioritization. I don't have a problem with putting that one first. But I'm not sure that they're not equally important.
Which is the second one?
I
The
don't know.
e-bikes?
I just think they're all important.
I think they're all important too, but it felt to me like we were using the master plan as a overarching way to look at the work that was being done this year. But
Okay,
Okay.
so let's put master plan first and we can consider as we go on how to order the rest if we want to change the order. So the scroll down just slightly. Great. Okay. And scroll up just slightly. I think so. Okay. Would anyone from the ad hoc, which is Nellis and Shawnee, like to speak to this?
can start it off. Tag team. As far as the timeline, we.
You want to start with an overview?
An overview? Yeah. So I guess just reading this is a follow-up from I guess what was on our master plan from last year. And what we tried to do is try to, as I said here, to implement the council direction from the 2/27/23, which was to review the policy and access to all bikes, electric bikes and other electronic coasting devices. So we tried to stay in line, sort of in lockstep with that. And to the fact that this is going to be an ongoing initiative, which is going to be based on how the technology changes. Because there's many facets of it, which is, how there might be some additional things that need to be added as a result of some of the technology change. Input from some of the other groups that we'll be working with, like Payback and so forth. So that's I think, kind of an overview of why this is important to kind of stay in the forefront. It's not something that's going to go away. So.
Johnny?
So the main focus was to implement what City Council motion had. And that was to look again at the Baylands and the Rastradero Preserve and consider for both bicycles and e-bikes and other devices, reduction of speed limit, which currently is 15, right? Where there at all and where to restrict bicycle and horse access on those trails in the Baylands, which I think horses are not allowed there anyway, and the Rastradero, and where to add bike racks at trailheads in those preserves so that people who get there potentially on an electric bike or any bike can park their cars. That was really, we included things that apparently were not in the motion. So that's the blue strike off that staff pointed out, that we included the parts that were not in the motion.
That was part of a motion That
That
part of the
didn't
motion
pass.
did not
That
carry.
the motion was there, but it did not pass.
Yep.
So the first priority that we have is to do exactly what was in the motion. But in addition, like Nelly said, there are other things that are evolving and we have an interest in them. So even though that was not directed by council, we included to continue monitoring of the evolving technology and potentially what's happening in that landscape. So we couldn't put that as the first priority because that was not what the city council directed us to do. But we still have an interest in that.
No, that's great. I think that makes sense to me that to start specifically with the city council directive. That's what council is specifically asking us to do. When we create a work plan, we're making a proposal to city council of what we think is appropriate to do. And so it is completely reasonable and within our purview to make it suggestions to do other things. And city council has the option of approving that or not.
Quick question. So, in terms of, so I guess we're reaching the goal to safety versus popular interest here, right? Balancing the both.
We're balancing a myriad of competing priorities.
Right. So do we have the right to say, okay, the reduction speed limit should be 10 miles, or is it up to public to recommend? What's the process here?
So we're gonna make a recommendation
Okay.
and use all the best resources available to us and do research and proper due diligence. And a lot of that is going to be leaning on staff and I won't speak for the ad hoc, but that's kind of the generalization.
Could we normally propose a solution, say, city-sponsored 10 pilot bikes? Would that be some solution without involving the public? So public can try out as a shared resources, then see how that goes. Would that be good for reducing the
That
stuff?
would be outside the scope of this. That would really be
Okay.
a different project and a
Okay.
different work plan item if we wanted to attack
Okay.
that or to look into that.
Okay.
We would be reaching out, we'd want to reach out to the I'm not sure to what extent that's within our purview, that is transportation department.
Yeah, that
really.
was, I was going to ask too. So whether it's
Unless we wanted
transportation.
to come up with a program to have bike shares to ride at parks or something like that,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
doesn't make any sense.
Success, we have a responsibility to, in working with staff to like make sure that the signage is something that is easily understood by the people that will be sort of the ones who will be using the e-bikes on those particular trails that is easily understood of what those things are. Identifying the proper places where rack locations, and that might be input maybe from the public or even from other agencies like Payback and so forth. And then, I think always considering what the restrictions are on some of the trails, especially as the technology changes, right? Or as we see other signage or what other communities are doing that could benefit, sort of add value to what we're calling, measuring the
Yeah.
success of the project.
Yeah, it'd be great to compare
Yeah.
with neighboring cities, how they do it. Yeah, yeah, great idea.
Okay.
I have a question for staff then. The things that we were directed to do are in the high priority. In the measures of success, again, the same things, plus the signage, which is a leftover from the previous ad hoc, so we kept it. But we put the continued monitoring of evolving technology as a lower priority, but something that we would like to do. What we don't have here is what Commissioner Way was discussing, which is, do we have any kind of monitoring? Or do we know what's actually happening in the field, or like what's out there, what's happening? And I don't know if we should add some level of, I don't even know how to say that, because monitoring is, it's not with numbers necessarily, it can be, but do we want to add something about continuing to follow trends of use or of park in the open spaces? I mean, in most parks, there is no limit what's on e-bikes or any kind of bikes. But should we add something that kind of keep an eye on what's happening? Or is that just something that staff does and doesn't come into this work plan?
Can I tag on to that? And that is, it's some of the discussions we've had as well. I mean, that you've got input, I guess, that would be coming from the rangers, like, are people exceeding, based on their eyeballs, the speed limits, and maybe public input is saying that, because these things are quiet, or there are other suggestions that might come from the input from the public, but also I guess the rangers would be sort of our unofficial monitoring tool, or is there other ways that we can monitor what's going on?
So if I could comment, and a suggestion that I wanted to add to this is, I think we should, in addition to monitoring the evolving e-bike technology, we should be monitoring policy of both state policy, evolving state policy, and neighboring jurisdictions.
Yeah, that seems perfectly reasonable. And for the monitoring, I might change it to assess how the recently enacted e-bike policies are working. Something to that effect might make sense in addition to what was just mentioned.
Okay, well, that's assess how the current policy works. But I don't know that we don't need to expand it to all bikes like they told us, which is not only e-bikes.
Yeah.
Well, I think if there's a specific bicycle policy that you would want to make a recommendation.
Then we have to do that anyway for those specific trails, which may need to have somewhere. I think, and I would like to add something to the monitoring, because I think, we have a very involved community, and people who spoke to us on this topic came almost equally from both sides. One was don't do it, and the other side was we want to ride everywhere. And I would like to add science here, monitor the science. Because, policy is not necessarily always based on science. But I think here it's important. It was important to many of the people who came to speak to us. And I would like to have, when there's a lot of what we found out that people really didn't know what the impacts were, right? In many of the environments. Some, we knew that there's impacts on bat roosting and colonies and things like that, but we didn't know all that much. So monitoring the science can actually tell us quite a lot.
So I think you're talking about monitoring the impacts using science.
Well,
because monitoring the evolving e-bike technologies is kind of monitoring what kinds of e-bikes are coming out, and
yeah,
I think we want to be monitoring the technology and impacts.
Yeah, you have the protecting habitats and wildlife in your beneficial impacts. So I'm wondering how you monitor that, and whether it's the quantity of e-bike on our open space, such as Bayland, would cause problem for that. It's just like, like speedboat in the lakes, etc. I'm not expert on that.
No, that's a good point. I mean, over time, you now start to see more bikes than you do pedestrians, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
and I come back to the safety issues
Yeah.
versus popular interest.
And That makes sense. I'm
That's
just,
good,
I'm
that's
just thinking about the impacts, really the assessing how the current e-bike policy is working. That needs to be addressed. That needs to be, part of that is assessing the impacts.
Yeah,
So with
Agreed,
impacts,
yeah.
you,
very much so.
so when you say assessing impacts, you mean both in terms of the biological impact, but also potentially safety issues? I mean,
Yeah,
any of
yeah.
the
Yeah.
plethora
Yeah.
of issues that came to the previous ad hoc and
Yeah.
were discussed by staff and the rangers
Yeah.
will probably come again. I don't know that we'll have a lot more information that we did before, but
But
maybe.
there has to be a checkpoint there somewhere.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I don't know if impacts need to be included in the first section. We do want to understand, we want to be aware of studies and impacts that are done regionally, locally, in the state, outside the state.
Well,
The difficulty with this is that the main impact that the existing scientific studies find on biological resources is not necessarily the type of technology, but how much access. The more people, the more bicycles, the more any kind of bicycles. It's just a matter of how much, rather than are you using this kind of bike or that kind of bike. And so I'm not sure how we address that.
So are we looking to monitor evolving e-bike technology and impact analysis and state and local policies?
I think the way you have it right, I mean, the way we have it now, sort of, I mean, if someone's looking at this who've not been directly involved in what it is that we're trying to achieve, I think it doesn't make sense reading it as to what, the fact is that we are continuing to monitor and evaluate the evolving e-bike technology. So, I mean, it's an ongoing and continuous effort. It's not like, I don't think we could ever say we're turning this off. It's going to be an ongoing effort, so.
So are you suggesting impact should not be included there, or and it's implicit in technology?
That is really important to me to have the word science
Yeah.
and impacts in there. I think we need to know there are more studies coming out, and there are some that identify impacts and some that say, oh, there's no difference with what happens. And I would like, when studies like that are there, and I would like to include that information. So to me, science is important and impacts are important. And the impacts do include other things like safety. I don't know that this was something that we had a lot of discussion of in the previous ad hoc, like where are these safe, where they might not be, and can we actually make a difference? And so I think it will be some repetition of what we've done before, but if there's new information, we should be able to consider it.
So, go ahead.
Can I just make a suggestion of, I mean, we want to have a specific work plan for each of these items, but I do think that this is one where something new may come up that we might not even know. So for this one, I think what we're trying to do is saying continue monitoring e-bike related issues, and then we can list some of the examples. So the technology, science, impacts, and policies. But I think there are maybe other issues that we're not necessarily going to list here that we don't want to limit the ad hoc to be able to do. So if we just list them as some examples, but just make it, I don't know what language you want to do, but e-bike issues or topics. And that way, anything related to e-bikes, it kind of gets covered in there.
I like
Yes.
that, but I think we need that the direction from that it's bicycle and e-bike access. So continue monitoring evolving bicycle, e-bike access issues, like the title of what we got from City Council.
Issues, including.
Such as, something like that. Yeah.
Science impacts sounds, it's not clear to me what that means.
Science, comma, impact.
But the-
Sorry, when you say science, do you mean like,
I don't think it's the right word.
like
Data,
research?
I guess
Scientific studies,
data.
Research,
yeah.
okay.
research, scientific research. There are studies that are done, and I've seen several of them recently, related to access by different kinds of modalities on levees or on other type of trails.
So would impact analysis be sufficient? I mean, that includes scientific studies as well as it's the impact to users to community members who can't ride their e-bike. Those are impacts. But it's
So I'm curious, we have both bicycle and a horse here, and so are we focusing on bicycle or are we looking to the best practice from horse access in the past?
So this is primarily e-bike related, but we're looking at policy related to both bicycle and e-bike, so we're including it here.
Okay, so if we have the concern for the environmental impact for e-bike, do we not want to put it into high priority and leave it in the low priority? So it's the similar issue of speedboat in the lakes, right? And the people popularize it, I don't know, 60s, 70s, and later realize how much impact they give to the fish and etc. Are we, at that phase as well? I'm just questioning. I'm not an expert on that.
I think it's reasonable to put the council directives as the high priorities and the other items as the lower priorities, but
I see.
I think we're probably digging into this a little too deep.
Okay.
Evolving issues. So the technology evolves, science evolves, impacts don't evolve.
No, the impacts are evolving. The impacts, as the usage evolves, the impacts of the usage evolve. And I don't,
But I think we had discussed this. I mean, because I think if you said environmental issues, you're saying that does not cover science. I mean, you're really looking at whether or not there's an impact to, if the increase in electronic e-bikes or scooters or whatever it might be over time, is there an environmental impact as a result of that? I mean, so do we want to be monitoring not only the technology, but also looking at what the environmental damage is or potential?
I'm back to the fact that impacts are not only environmental. They're conflicts. I think part of the reason they sent us to look at horse use is because there are conflicts between equestrians and bicycles. There are other conflicts that we will be looking at because of the high priority that we were directed to do. I like the word science if that is difficult for scientific studies, but if that's a problem, you can keep just the impact.
I guess because there's so many things.
In.
There's so many things you can wrap around science, though. It's broad. It's not specific, I guess.
As somebody who's a scientist, to me, it's quite, or has been in the past. That could only make sense, but if it's difficult for others, then okay.
I would vote for omitting science. It's confusing to include it to me.
So how do impacts evolve? I'm not sure what you mean by, if you take the word science, then we have involving issues. So involving issues would be, one of them is technology is an evolving issue, I guess. And then if you take out the word science, you have evolving impacts and evolving regulation.
I mean, the impacts are basically the usage impacts. I think usage is implied there.
Do you want to put use in conflicts and impacts instead of science?
No, Shani.
No?
I think we're,
Okay.
with all respect, I think we're already getting too detailed on this and we need to move
All
on
right.
more quickly. I'm going to suggest that we remove science.
Okay, go ahead.
Other comments on things? I have a number I could start with. Go ahead, Joy.
Just one quick question. So when we say develop signage, do we mean the wording, the content?
That's the
Okay.
specific language from city council, so
Okay.
it's broad. But
Okay.
it's
Thank you.
new signs and what to put on them, or updating existing signs. So some comments that I have, rather than implementing, so for council, that should become city council, but rather than implementing the direction, I would suggest proceed with city council directive. Because we're not, if that's acceptable to people. And it's city council to review policy and access. Yep. This policy, I would say policy and access. Because we're looking at more policy than just access. Arastadero Pearson should be reversed. It should be Pearson Arastadero. Under resource, so for timeline, FY24. Under resources, I don't think, should we just, I don't know that we need to detail the policy development, community outreach, et cetera. Or is it helpful to include this? We haven't included this level of detail. Most of the other work plan items don't include that level of detail.
That's fine. I think it's okay to remove it. We copied it from the previous
Sure.
item, so it's just what it was before, but it's okay to shorten that.
Low to moderate staff time. I do think including funding is appropriate. Can't. Can't see what you have there. Oh, just remove just say funding for implementation, such as signage and bike racks, but it's not policy implementation, or we don't need to limit it to policy. Yeah. Under the state mandated council approved box, we can include master plan policies 1G2 and 2A7. 1G2 and 2A7. There's dots between each of those. So it's 1.G.2 and 2.A.7. That's what I have. Others have any comments on these suggestions?
Works for me.
The goal number for this?
I'm sorry?
The goal number for this item?
Let's look at the numbers. Let's do the ordering later. Back where, can you
Pardon?
scroll back up, please? Under impacts, it should be city council. And one thing I'll note is, as we're considering policy and access, as stated, we're another box, but we're looking at how to potentially consider where bikes and e-bikes should not be accessed. We're not within this work plan item specifically considering where e-bikes might perhaps, where e-bikes should be accessed where they are not currently permitted, or where e-bikes should be permitted where they're not currently permitted. And recognizing that this was a controversial issue within the community, with not an obvious, with varying views on in different parts. I don't know if that's something we want to include or not.
So basically reversing our previous recommendations and re-examining that?
Well, the initial the previous recommendation was to, at this point, right now, we're not advocating for permitting e-bikes anywhere in the open space preserves. Part of the rationale for that was the timing. It was effectively a change for the city and for staff in terms of how things have been understood and enforced. And so there wasn't appropriate signage in place. There wasn't appropriate community education in place. And so those were specific reasons given for not permitting e-bikes anywhere. If the ad hoc is going through and looking at places where e-bikes and bicycles perhaps should not be permitted, do you want to also consider locations where bicycles are permitted that e-bikes could be permitted as well?
I want to take on what you said about community education. Should we put that into one of the priorities? Whether that's a part of the process, right? I just thought what you said is quite important. We don't see any over here. Should we look into that, put into one of the priorities, say the lower priority, we should do some community education? From safety versus environmental impact.
A lower priority item could be outreach, communication, and outreach of bicycle and e-bike policies.
I think that puts the amount of staff time that we'll need back to equal what it was last time.
You're already looking at the signage issue. So that's a component of it. The websites have been updated already with information, Darren.
Yes.
So I don't think it's uh, would it be something would it be something included in the first item under continued monitoring? Probably not. We're talking about communication and outreach of bicycle and e-bike policy.
So is that in the resources or is it in the low priority?
Darren, is this something that you would look for from the ad hoc in conjunction with the other work that the ad hoc is doing?
Specifically outreach to the community to get feedback.
Review bicycle/e-bike policy, communication, and outreach. Policy, communication, and outreach. That's right.
What do you think that would look like? Just like in broad examples of.
I mean, it's getting feedback from the community and for payback in terms of
I see.
how is the web. I mean, the ad hoc had asked payback, the pedestrian and bicycle advisory committee, to review current signage and website information and recommend back on how that could be updated, be more effective.
Are you asking if that should be the responsibility of the ad hoc or the city staff, or working in conjunction with both?
The question to Darren is should this be something the ad hoc is assisting with?
Yeah, in the example of the signage, it's, I think, definitely in staff's plan, vet that immediately with, we've already developed it, sit down with the new ad hoc, go through it, and then to the payback group and do the
the
same.
signage component is specifically directed by.
Yeah,
council,
specifically
and that's
signage.
part of the high priority.
I guess it would depend on if, could this or would this be a fresh analysis on the last point you made of, are there places where e-bikes are currently not allowed that should be?
How about continue monitoring instead of review?
Sure.
That's not, that makes it kind of a light action, perhaps?
Sure.
So
Or
with
do
that,
you,
what are you monitoring? I'm sorry. Are you monitoring the communication and outreach, or?
basically you're trying to look at the effectiveness. Ultimately, you're trying to improve the effectiveness of policy communication to the community.
So yeah, how the current e-bike policy is working. So do you say communicated and working? I'm not sure what this actually entails.
Or would it be an ongoing review rather than monitoring?
I guess it can be, I guess it, maybe we're better off not including it. It just could be part of the assessment of how the assessment of the current
Yeah.
e-bike policy. Fine. That's how the current e-bike policy is working.
Because that can have both discussions with staff, the rangers, but also with the community, right?
Mhm.
In the interest of time for everything else, I'm going to suggest that we move on unless someone else has a immediate comment on this. Number two.
We felt like this was pretty simple, and I think the rationale that we talked about at the retreat was the fact that very often we talk about getting grants, but we really don't have a process, or if we do, we don't understand what the process has been and what the history has been. And so we kind of wanted to have a discussion about if grants are really important to and we wanted to start with that. But we felt like there needed to be a history of past grants that have been given or rejected by community services. And then what we could do to help going forward, recognizing that there's just no staff to do this. And there are times that you can get a grant to do a planning grant to get a grant, but I'm not so sure that that's appropriate in this case. And so we just tried to make this simple, and we didn't think it would take a really long time for sure. It's 24, and a measure of success was going to be one grant if we decided to go ahead with it once we found out the information, and of course working with the staff. So, Joy, want to add to that?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Krebs. Like you mentioned, it's something we've been talking about, and it would help to progress what the next steps would be. I just want to add or re-echo what you've said. Part of the measure of success for us, like a performance metrics, would be to be able to get at least one grant. And we're hoping that we'll be able to access volunteer grant writers. I'm not too sure how past grants have been, received or got, but it might help to set perspective on how we want to move forward with this. And also to open the opportunity for interns who might, want to help, or kind of like, we're looking for how we can use resources that might be available that we're not really leveraging on right now. So we're also hoping that besides that as well, that we all know how the grant writing process can be, tiring and, very demanding. We're hoping that we can also support to make this a reality, because it's something that the city will be able to, gain from. I don't know if you have anything to add, Commissioner Wei.
Yeah, I'm echoing both of you. We had the discussion on that, and the goal we try to reach is actually try to reduce staff's bandwidth or additional responsibility. So we hope to, if there's existing, say, spreadsheet or etc., have the past grants, we can take it from there to establish a process, maybe recruit local high schooler or college students in the city to help grant writing and identify one grant per year moving forward. If that looks okay for the staff bandwidth, or if you have a past history of existing grants.
Just to add to what you just said, Commissioner Wei, another thing we talked about was which projects do we need to focus our spotlight on that would need grants? So that might be another important piece we want to shed some light on.
Vice Chair, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I think I was confused based on our conversation at the retreat on the scope of this. I think the high priority says the discussion of the relevant grants necessary, and I thought it was more looking at holistically about the grant process and whether or not it was beneficial, the sort of cost benefit to it. So I guess I got a little confused in looking at this, where the measure of success is the one grant obtained for the year, but we're also looking at the use of grants. And I thought it was more looking at the process and figuring out what staff time would be needed for a grant in terms of the monitoring and implementing the grant. It's not just the writing of the grant that I think there's the lack of time for. It's the actual administration of the grant and reporting that also needs to be considered. So I guess I thought that the ad hoc was tasked with working with staff to figure out when is it worth it to pursue a grant? Then can we go get some help staff to actually support the administration of the grant? But I may have misunderstood the conversation at the retreat.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. We had a little bit of trouble getting ourselves together, and we were feeling like we were coming up against the deadline to get it into the staff because people were on vacation or away or whatever. And so I think at the last minute, we kind of, maybe I'm misremembering this, but we kind of threw in, okay, the measure of success would be one grant. But it really, for me, it kind of doesn't really fit in there. I'd be happy to remove it if my other commissioners would like to do that and really focus on the deciding whether grants are important for community service or not. So, and the process that we would follow working with the staff.
I have a suggestion for the top level goal that might kind of set things in the right direction. It seems like, and work with the wording, but consider how to increase funding for city programs and projects through grants. I think that's ultimately the goal. We're trying to figure out how can grants be used to help us achieve what we're trying to accomplish. So that was consider how to increase funding for city programs and projects through grants.
You want to say community services or city programs, Chair?
CSD. Yeah, thanks. That's good clarification. And obviously, we're not looking at all CSD programs and projects here, but I think that probably narrows it down.
What does CSD
Community
stand?
Services Department. So
Okay.
that's the broader group that Darren is part of. So we could, it could be parks, open space and recreation
Mhm.
programs and projects.
Because we do know that when people from Public Works come to give reports to us, often they have gotten a grant, especially in environmental services or open space or something like that.
So instead of CSD, should go with parks, open space and recreation programs and projects.
So I presume, yeah, what we were struggling to, three of us, was also trying to identify whether there's a past process or past list of existing grants we can use as a foundation to do some gap analysis and to look into which grants being awarded, we can continue applying for that, or which grants dead, it's never really useful, and which can be, something new so that we can establish that process for grant application.
I think understanding where we've been is an important part of the process.
Yeah.
Certainly. Shani?
Staff has applied for various grants that are, for example, removing the eucalyptus at Foothills Park, or grants for which we did not get for restoring the creek over there in Foothills Park, or the horizontal levee, which is what came from Public Works. So I think what we could look at in addition to how to increase funding is in partnerships with other departments and potentially with outside agencies. The Water District received a grant for restoration over there at Calabasas. And, maybe they would be helpful to get grants for Foothills Park. So I think that identifying partner could, if possible, either other departments as well would be helpful. I don't know where it fits in here.
I think parks, open space and recreation.
So question to Darren, we do have a list of past grants somewhere we can look into, right?
I think we can put together a list. I don't know that I've got
There is,
one ready.
okay.
to hand to you right now.
Would that be too much of time consuming?
No, I
to
don't
do
think so.
that? Okay. Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah,
Depending how far back. we're-
That's true.
Yes.
I guess, yeah, it's like last year is sufficient, right? We take from there. We don't have to look into 10 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's look at the impacts then. So I think a beneficial impact is obtaining new grants, increases funding for programs and projects.
Want me to type that in? So
That's a suggestion. Sure, obtaining new grants, increases funding.
to increase funding?
No, the beneficial impact is obtaining new grants, increases funding.
Oh,
The
Gotcha.
beneficial impact is increased funding for programs and projects. I think we've already referred to the programs and projects as Parks, Open Space and Rec, so I don't think we need to include that again.
Yeah.
Yep.
So as far as grants are critical to the community, PRC and community, that's not a beneficial impact in and of itself. And if there's a benefit that you want to extract from rewarding that. So as an impact
Could-
to.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, could you, for that second point that you took out, could we say obtaining new grant increases funding for programs and projects which are critical to PRC community service? Do you even, I mean, if you want to say that, if you,
I think it's implied.
it's implied, okay.
Regarding staff time.
Hmm.
Leveraging other resources to staff impact.
Hmm.
Other being us.
I would almost just take this bullet out
Yeah,
because there's going to be
there's-
staff
it's-
support for this ad hoc, and then there's going to be staff to implement any grants that are agreed upon. So I would just take it out because we don't know that for sure.
I took it out.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the resources needed. To moderate staff. We don't know that we're going to use those grant writers. These are ideas that could be explored.
I think it was an idea to be explored that we didn't want to lose
So it's not,
track of and
the resources
consider
needed,
the possibility.
resources needed, what is the measurable cost that city council should be considering? For this work? Thank you. So the resources needed is, what are the measurable costs that city council should be considering to approve this work plan item? Okay, then the measure of success should be directly tied to the high and lower priority items. So why don't we look at the items first? High priority is I think you're looking to you want to you want to look at the whole picture and try and figure out how
Yeah.
grants can be used to
Yeah,
how we can qualify for more grants, increase funding. So I think you're looking at the high priority item is to do an assessment, assess.
the past grants, right? Assess the existing grants.
Well, assess how grants may be used to effectively increase funding for programs and projects.
Okay.
That's the top level. This is going to include reviewing the current grant application process and associated resources.
Yeah. Yeah, well
Reviewing
said.
current grant application process, associated resource, and recent grants. Grant applications, okay. Whether or not they were successful. So we want to probably replace the and between process and associated with a comma. And reviewing becomes review. Maybe lower priority items become consider something about considering what resources would be what new resources may be effective in increasing, may be effective to increase the grant applications. And the new resources means volunteer grant writers, interns.
Can you add partnerships to
Right
that?
after including partnerships.
With new resources and partnerships. Yep.
Quick question.
It would be effective to increase grant funding. Sure.
Yeah, quick question. Thanks, Chair. I wanted to confirm, are all projects or programs eligible for grants? Or are there specific programs and projects that, could go for grants? Just want to
Depends on
clarify.
the grant.
Yes, what I'm asking is, so we can be focused on what exactly we want the grants for.
Darren?
Yeah, I think staff could pretty easily come up with a list of 10 projects, programs that we think we could benefit from having additional money that we don't have allocated for now. I think that would be fairly simple. And that's probably a good place to start in terms of where we already have direction to move forward on them and are lacking funding. That to me seems like a high priority to focus on for grants.
Yeah, that'd be great. That's the foundation we can work from. And also, secondary is the successful, like you mentioned, the recent grant application, which been successful as well. So we can see whether we can continue those partnerships.
Yeah, and for that one, it may be helpful to look beyond just community services. Commissioner Kleinhaus mentioned the horizontal levy. They have had success recently, and the type of grant that they're getting is applicable to other natural setting, environmental improvement type projects. So that'd be a good one. And then grassroots ecology is really successful at getting grants for things inside our preserve. So they're the kind of partnership that I think we could leverage and say, this might be outside of your particular area of focus, but it's important to the city. Can you help us or can you guide us?
Excellent. Yeah, that's a great framework.
So maybe on the high priority item, we should start off by work with staff to assess. Staff is a key component here.
Yeah.
Says how to use grants more effectively to increase funding. Under work plan items, we've got we can add program 5.G.4. Nonprofit grants groups seek donor funding, including foundation grants, but small.
Chair, can I trouble you to
Yeah, sure.
reiterate that?
Program and all of the items with a number letter, a number of programs, the policies are a number and letter. So that leader. Some of us are it's 5.G.4. The measures of success. And measures of success. Back to the high priority, the high and low priority plans. We're not establishing a process for grants. Staff already has a process for grants. So would a measure be report on recommendations to increase grant funding or improve grant funding?
Yeah, I think that's that makes sense.
And is it realistic to aim for one new grant?
So we'd
and
be happy
is
to
that-
delete that without specific.
And I mean, is that one new grant because of the actions by the commission, or hopefully
that kind of matrix after we've done the review and look into the recommendation to see what's achievable. Some, takes a year to receive grants, some takes 2 years, right? Depends on what sort of grant you're applying and when is the deadline cycle, etc.
so I want to.
I think the horizontal levy took like 5 years. I mean, it's like, it takes a
Yeah,
long
yeah.
time.
So some takes much longer. So I think maybe we wouldn't want to put that new grant per year as a goal. I think the measure of success, if we can report the recommendations, that's, what do you think, Anne?
You can, I'm not sure I'm suggesting that you do this, but you could measure success by applying for a grant rather than obtaining the
Right.
grant.
Yeah,
Or-
applying within this, yeah.
Or recommend grants to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yeah, recommend grants to seek for this
Yeah.
year. Yeah, yeah, that's better wording. Yeah? What's your thoughts?
Recommend new grants to
pursue?
be pursued.
To
Thank
pursue,
you.
yeah,
I
yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
fond of seek.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great. Anything else from anyone?
Almost nothing black left on this one, so
But the,
the NA.
the spirit of it's there.
Yeah, I think it's good now.
Okay. Jumping ahead to number 4. Park dedication. This was Vice Chair and myself. Andy, you want to run with us?
Okay, so this one was to build off of prior ad hoc. So looking at potential sites, so the broader view of potential sites within the community to be dedicated as parkland. This encompasses the Bayshore Road project that Darren already provided an update on tonight, but also to do best practices and future review of potential sites. So those sort of high priority, low priority, the immediate needs as well as future opportunities. We've carried over the beneficial impacts, citing the 4 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. The timeline adheres. Staff time is really the only resource needed for this one. And yeah, measure of success recommending 1 or more sites for dedication as parkland, as the Bayshore one is kind of baked in there. So there will have others being considered.
For staff time, Darren, would this be low or maybe minimal? Low staff time doesn't sound quite right. Or is it low to moderate?
Yeah, my hunch is, well, it sort of depends. I was just thinking about some of the more complex locations may require more analysis, but probably spread out between us and real estate and planning. So I'm fine saying low.
If e-bikes was moderate
Yeah,
last year, then I don't think this gets there.
sure.
It's not
Low
moderate.
staff time. Do you want to save this piece or just?
Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
helpful. If you want to add anything else, real estate, I'm not sure. Modest staff time.
So in the beneficial impact, increased parkland, I think many of the parcels or land that you'll be looking at is already used as parkland. So you may want to say increase dedicated parkland.
Okay.
There's some of the sites that I've seen proposed in the past are either have park or recreation facilities community uses on a regular basis.
I'm not going to suggest adding in perpetuity.
Oh, please do. So does this include looking for opportunities to buy land or create new park where there isn't one now?
Potentially, yes. Realistically, probably not. But if opportunities afford themselves, then they will report it back to the commission and passed along to city council as appropriate.
So would it be inappropriate to include some aspirational parts in this?
To include aspirational,
Just that if there's an opportunity that comes along to buy new parkland, that it should always be something that we think about.
Right, I think that's what the best practices for future review, like if the opportunities arise versus seeking them out, that would probably, be something that would come from the ad hoc.
Actually, I think that's in the parks master plan.
Mhm.
And it's also the suitability of potential sites. Part of the suitability is the cost element.
Yeah, but looking for opportunities it was either in the comprehensive plan or the parks master plan where it identifies specifically looking for opportunities that can come up and never return for parkland.
Yeah,
Okay,
all the
good.
master plan items.
Yeah.
Other comments? Move on down, please. Okay. Playing fields policy and program review is Nellis and myself. Nellis, do you want to take this?
Sure. So I believe this is a new goal that is probably timely. So it's playing field policies and program review. So review it and recommend updates to playing field policy and programs, including synthetic turf replacement strategy and field reservation policies. The resources, I think this is going to involve a lot of, I guess Darren can confirm this, low to moderate um, needs. And the timeline is probably one that's going to transition across both fiscal year 24, maybe beyond, depending on what the assessments are.
And we prioritize there's really two main aspects to this we're looking at. One is the recommendation on synthetic turf replacement strategy. And that's a higher priority item since funding for that hopefully will be included in the FY24 budget. And work might be commencing sometime maybe late fall, early winter. So the timeline was set for Q1-2. Maybe the timeline for the next item should be Q3-4. That's the review of the field reservation policy. And that is something that the master plan calls out specifically to review periodically. That's program 1.f.1. And we also can reference 2.a. That's 2.c.3 is assess the type of turf, new synthetic turf product or natural turf that should be used when replacing an existing synthetic turf field that is due for replacement. That's pretty directly applicable. The resources could be low to moderate. You can get rid of increase in. And a component of this is getting stakeholder feedback.
Where does the replaced turf go?
It depends. It's either recycled, sometimes it can even be donated to other communities that have a need for older, mostly worn out turf. I've seen it happen. In fact, when we redid Cubberley, a portion went to an art project within the city. So various.
Questions or comments, suggestions?
Quick question.
So with
Oh, okay.
there a way to include some of the stakeholders in working together to help fund the fields? Saying that, did we ever discuss that? There are some opportunities for grants with associations like soccer. I don't know whether we want to put that in or not.
There are certainly opportunities for this. I'm not
They don't need to be.
aware of any specific interest. I think it's outside the scope of this work plan item.
Oh,
What about another way to say end of life synthetic fields? Does anybody have a better word for that?
that's what they call it.
Is that what they call it? Okay.
I think it's better than worn out.
I actually thought worn out was better, but that's okay.
I'm sure it's out of scope of this, and the people who love playing on these fields will not want to do this. However, there's a lot of scientific evidence that shows that these are harmful to the environment, not really recyclable. You can't really recycle the materials, and there is some evidence of severe impacts to health. And I don't know if that's part of it or not, but I want to say that. I've seen a recent study from England that talks about cancer. I know it's not the first one. There were many before, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I was going to ask, is there a thought of changing that to natural field, say grass, or what is better for the environment and what takes more to maintain? If we changing to natural materials. I'm not an expert. I'm just actually hear what you're saying, and I think I'm echoing that.
Maybe that would be adding something to the point of evaluating existing technologies. I mean, because this probably have, if you're looking at something that was probably installed 10 years ago, it's close to, and there's been a lot of technology changes. So maybe what we do is add something to this that is evaluating or evaluating or reviewing changes in the technology that could be used. I mean, in some fashion.
I would suggest that this is within scope of what we have specified. And we're recommending, we want to review and recommend the strategy for replacing a synthetic turf field, including materials and process. That's implying that it may be synthetic that we'd be replacing with, but it could be natural materials.
Okay.
That's within scope. But I know that's the first point I'll say. In general, the effectiveness of synthetic turf fields for the city is important in terms of increasing the field hours that are available to the community. If the same fields were replaced with grass, they would not be usable for the same number of hours that synthetic fields are available for, because the fields need to rest, and they don't do well in rainy weather as well. So even in dry weather, the fields can't be used to the extent that the current synthetic fields are, and that's one reason why there would be no proposals to add lighting at grass fields. But assessing the health impacts is something that we need to consider.
Yeah,
I know there have been advancements made in terms of the materials used for synthetic turf fields. Recycled tire treads are no longer used, and that was the big one that led to all of to most of the cancer related
yeah,
research.
agreed. Yeah. Yeah, it's just like a lead paint and not being used, and what sort of the right turf to use. Yeah.
And frankly, I spend a lot of time on these fields. If there's a health risk to it, I'd like to know.
Yeah, well, just bring on, just being on a farm and they have the conversation practice of regenerating the soil, and the soil pollution makes a lot of impact of what we eat, just similar thoughts. But I'm not an expert. I'm neither an expert or athlete. So, but the consideration put out there is really important. Yeah.
Okay, but it's within scope of what we have specified right now.
Great.
The existing turf fields that were just replaced did not last the time that they were expected to, right? So I
No,
think,
they did. 8 to 10 years is the expected lifespan. What we replaced was the infill that had been problematic and failed. It was not rated for our temperature. So it was sort of a different issue.
so is that something that you're also looking to evaluate the material that's going to be used to make sure that we don't have early demise?
Yeah, I mean, the problem we had last time around is that the wrong material was used. The material that was not rated for our geography or climate was used, and that melted and globed together because it's rated for a lower temperature area. So part of the process, I suppose, may need to be some sort of confirmation that the right materials are being used. And I'm quite confident, even if the commission wasn't involved in this, that staff would figure out how to make sure that problem didn't happen again. Shall we move
Excellent.
on?
Yeah, excellent.
Did you have something else? Commissioner Webb?
I was hoping there would be something about sustainability, but that's not part of the scope.
That can still come under optimum.
Okay.
Right. And whatever the ad hoc comes up with will be coming to the commission for review and recommendation to staff. Okay. Project 6, recreation program review.
I'll let you go. You want to go first?
And when we go through numbering these, since this one might make sense to put number 2, since it has some more direct tie-ins with the master plan.
And we believe it's as we discussed in the annual retreat, it will be a prerequisite for the goal 1, the master plan goal. And we're hoping that this will be able to address so many gaps that we have, discussed during the annual retreat, especially for programs that are not, recreation programs, people who are new coming and they don't know that they have to, be alert to subscribe to programs once they're released. So we're hoping that this goal will be able to not only address the current goal gap that we experience, but also find an opportunity to provide or expand more program offerings that, could cover almost free and free as well. And we're hoping that we can leverage, just like the fundraising one, to be able to leverage on residents that can provide or volunteer, and then also partnerships as well, to help us expand how much programs that we currently offer. And also make the communications or awareness better so that new residents would, be opportune to benefit from programs that we currently offer. So maybe you want to add more, Commissioner Wei?
Yeah, sort of echo that. I guess probably both of us come from, as a new resident, somewhat. I've been 17, 18 years here, and also from immigrant perspective, I observed many new households in Palato since I moved here, 15% of Asian to 38% Asian. And a lot of people don't know the existing program. And the second is complaints oversubscribed of the current program. So we thought to leverage the increase the population and the new immigrants in the city to call for more volunteer teachers for new programs, which is not yet in Joy catalog, and also use that to leverage the excitement of new programs to attract new funding and grants, which is tying up what we were talking about earlier. And also the affordability and to look into more inclusive community for us all. That makes sense?
Comments? Millis.
So when you, for beneficial impacts, you're indicating that it's going to reduce the financial and social impacts of Palo Alto residents. How can you, what was the sort of, what was the discussion around that? I mean, what's the financial and social impact for Palo Alto on that?
I'll take the financial, you can
Yeah.
take the social. So the financial part would be like leveraging on partners that can, and maybe like residents that can volunteer free programs. So that's the financial aspect. Then I'll let you talk about the social.
Yeah, so social related to financial in a way, I absorbed just from my Chinese community, a lot of sort of moms stay at home, actually have extra time, or kids in college and they have skills, say teaching yoga, teaching music in the park. So leverage the resources we have in the residents and also bring them into the community. If especially they just arrive here 5-10 years or less and don't know, actually they could offer their skill sets versus how to be part of the mainstream in the community.
If I understand what you're trying to do, I think we need to be more positive and reduce financial and social impact. There is some sort of impact, which is, I think, what Nellis was mentioning, which is not clear. And so thinking that what you're looking for is to provide affordable, equitable, and inclusive recreation opportunities. So it's like what you want to do rather than like reaction to something that you don't like. And the other thing is that from what you say, you're looking to involve the community in offering programming.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's in there, but I think those are engaging the community in providing affordable, equitable, and inclusive programming is how I would say that.
Yeah, that's certainly better expressed. And so it's linking back to community health wellness, expanding the offering to, say, meditation classes in the park, and people can lead.
Right.
And people who have the time to lead, and maybe offering that as a free class, experimenting different offerings which is not existing, and also look into a solution for the current oversubscribed problem on the Enjoy catalog.
So if you want to adopt that language, I think that includes that. And you can explore ways to engage community members in providing programming.
Okay, yeah.
So taking a step back, I'm not sure that this, I appreciate the intention and the goal here, and I think the manner that Commissioner Kleinhaus rephrased this in terms of exploring ways to engage the community in providing affordable, equitable, inclusive recreational opportunities. I think that's a great goal. I'm not sure that that's what we talked about at the retreat in terms of, and my concern here is the tie-in with the master plan review and not getting the cart too far ahead of the horse in terms of where we're going with the master plan review. I think these are very important considerations to dig into, given that we're going to do a comprehensive review of all the programs and projects, including the recreation programs. My impression is that we were after that this ad hoc was created to do something a little bit more objective as a foundational step to work in parallel with the master plan review ad hoc, and so that the goal was, it started off to be a review of the Enjoy catalog programs, and then we talk about it, consider what other recreation programs there are besides the Enjoy catalog. And Enjoy catalog is a great place to start, and so it's kind of an Enjoy catalog and other recreational programs. Thinking of this as more of a when we talked about the master plan review to assess the status of all the master plan programs and projects, kind of part of one component of that is going to be to review all of the Enjoy catalog programs. And my understanding was this ad hoc would be kind of getting a head start to can work in parallel with the master plan ad hoc, but not move too far forward until the direction was recommended by the master plan ad hoc and then agreed upon by the full commission, so that we're not, so that we work more efficiently both for ourselves and the staff resources that we're drawing.
Yeah,
upon.
makes sense. So should we modify the goal here, which is working in parallel with the foundings, with the master plan?
Darren, do you have comments on this?
Yeah, this is a tricky one because we're working collaboratively with another one. I had sort of the same impression that perhaps this particular goal would be doing a homework assignment almost for the master plan analysis specific to the programs that we're currently offering. Analyze them, break them down, interpret, and then pass that on to the group working on the master plan was my understanding. Which makes sense to me.
So is that what you sketched out in the?
Yeah, starting language just certainly isn't complete, but something that I thought might be helpful and it might not.
Yeah, I like what's stated in the blue, the edited version. Yeah, there was definitely intention. We do the gap analysis and then pass on to the master plan team to see how the good fit. That's definitely the intention.
So I have concerns that the gap analysis is a little more complicated to be able to just jump into, because we need to decide on what gaps we're looking to assess. In terms of, I think you touched on some of the things in what you have written down here, but in terms of affordability, equitability, inclusiveness, it seems like these are gaps of some of the gaps are easier to assess than others. I think in terms of categorizing the offerings, we want to add something that includes how, I'm not sure what the right word is, but how full the oversold programs and the waiting lists,
Could that be captured as availability?
Excuse me?
Could that be captured as availability?
Availability. Well, I think I don't know if there's any metrics available in terms of how quickly programs sell out or fill up. But
The feedback I heard from the community is like 5 minutes.
I know that, but what metric, do we have any metrics to assess that? So capacity of.
Yeah, capacity is
is what
definitely,
we're
yeah,
looking- what we're
yeah,
talking
a good
about.
description for that.
And maybe that should come before fee reduction use. And capacity and availability together. It's just one. Would we call it capacity and availability or something to us?
Yeah. So, in terms of process, do you prefer, Chair, do you want us to wait until you have the overall strategy and the guideline, then we can start to develop a gap analysis,
I think
which is
so.
perfectly fine. Yeah, for us, yeah. Right? Oh, you want to?
That wasn't how I
Okay.
interpreted it, just like what Darren said. It was supposed to be like a handoff. And I think the main problem or the main challenge or snag was the fact that programs were getting filled very quickly.
Yeah.
And I can attest to that because I have kids and it's impossible to get them in.
Yeah, I have a few mom friends told me that. Yeah, it's very different from.
Assessing the capacity and availability of the existing programs. And part of it, part of the challenge for the ad hoc in compiling this data will be finding broad metrics that you can use to assess that rather than.
How do we go about that? How do we go about finding?
You talk to staff and.
Okay.
I don't think we want to get into it here. I don't know.
Okay, okay.
Is my answer. Darren?
Yeah, it'd be a conversation with staff.
Okay, so
Direct staff.
should we put a high priority as working with the staff to find out, instead of gap analysis, to identify the gaps? Coming back to, seem to be all other goals is working with the staff to identify the broader matrix.
So I think the gap analysis is not going to be part of the top priority.
Okay,
And might not be part of this goal at all until we, in the same way that there will be a new master plan goal for Q3, Q4 of the fiscal year. I think we might aim to have a new goal for this ad hoc as well. And so I see that Darren's put the timeline to be FY24 Q1, 2. So aim for, right now, let's define work for the next 6 months.
got it.
Or work to be done in parallel with the master plan that's more straightforward. That will be incredibly useful for us, but this is a way to work in parallel. Because the reality is, I don't expect that we're going to have the complete master plan review done this fiscal year. I think that we're going to identify a big chunk to do as the next step, but I'm not confident that we will complete that step in the next 12 months. But part of what we want to do is establish a process that we have some catch up to do.
So the priority will be work with staff to identify the broader matrix of the current recreation programs in terms of capacity and availability. Yeah, so we can delete the gap analysis.
Work with staff to assess and categorize current programs.
To assess the current capacity and availability of the programs.
I think we want to, rather than specifying capacity and availability, I think it's all of the things in the parentheses above. So
Right.
So maybe
the matrix.
So I think we could be more general. I think we could be more general and not call that out
Okay,
to assess or generate an overview or maybe we need to go to get into specifics. So
I actually think that that was what this came from, right? What the request was, let's look at our Enjoy catalog and see where do we need more resources, where people can't get into classes, or there's not enough classes, or something like that. So that's really what the ad hoc wanted. Now we're, I understand we want some bigger picture here, but I think there's an urgency and some of it may not take that much work to identify. Well, we just need 5 more, I don't know what,
Well,
classes of some kind.
I think a lower priority could be to identify gaps
okay.
and potential solutions.
But-
But I don't think it's a complete gap analysis.
Okay.
yeah, but I don't say you can identify any gaps unless you have the data to sort of support that. And that's going to, unless staff is already in the process of have a lot of data that says, how many people tried to get into programs, how many people were enrolled in programs, and to look at that over a period of X number of years. And that's going to, if that data already exists, then maybe there's not a lot of work that staff will have to do other than someone has to analyze it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
based on that
yeah,
is how do you
yeah,
come
yeah.
up with thinking of.
I really like the data approach. So if asking the staff, if Darren thinks you have current data, say last 12 months, 24 months for subscription versus,
Well, I think you have to go back further than that.
Yeah.
Part of this is going to be developing or identifying metrics to begin gathering moving forward. Sorry, Darren, did you want to say something?
It was only to respond to the question about how much I think staff has in terms of the metrics and data and how far it goes back.
Yeah.
I'm not positive. We'd have to connect with them and see what they've got. I
Okay.
know they frequently will report out saying such and such camp filled up and got fully booked in 3 hours. I'm
Uh-huh.
assuming they're tracking that over the longer period of time. So yes, we'll dig into that with
Yeah.
staff.
But the other side of that, this is not sort of a new problem, right? So
No.
it's been ongoing. My kids are small. So
I could tell you when I came to the city, 1999, that was the case. People were camped out in front of
Yeah.
Lucy
Oh, yeah.
Stern.
Oh, really?
waiting
been there,
to get
done
in.
that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe the classes we subscribe was not the most
Yeah.
popular one.
The drop, right? Yeah.
So come back to the Enjoy catalog. This is actually does have a certain time sensitivity, not for me personally, for my family, but it's for a lot of people who have growing children. So that's probably a sort of small point to start and expand to other recreation program. While we're working in parallel with the master plan being hashed out.
So something that could be a lower priority goal is consider new opportunities, or consider something basically is considering the new
Expansion.
programs to get into the the next Enjoy catalog.
Mm.
Uh,
Have we,
And really when we say identifying gaps and potential solutions, the implicit word in front of there is begin.
yeah, where to begin, that's true, yeah.
I think we're talking about like 2 different types of gap analysis. I think one group of us is talking about like a high level gap analysis that ties in with the master plan, whereas the other portion is talking about really operational gaps,
More concrete,
funding,
yeah.
staffing availability, to help staff the classes that are overpacked, and then, or to staff classes that are not offered that maybe should be offered. And so while we don't necessarily have the holistic view to tell us what problems we're trying to solve, I think that looking at making classes more affordable, more accessible, and what ways we can do that in terms of staffing or grants or any sort of community partners things, that is something that probably could be done decoupled from the master plan. So I'm almost wondering if we want to make this just more of a standalone, not necessarily try to force it to tie in with the master plan as much, and just say, evaluate Enjoy catalog for solutions in terms of affordability and accessibility and programs that are not.
Yeah, that might be
Because
a-
I feel like
yeah.
that's getting at what
Yeah.
everyone's saying, is that the impetus of why this was even brought up in the first place.
That might be a good starting point, just access the Enjoy catalog. What do you all think?
It'd be like decoupling it, is what.
Yeah, it'd be probably more focused too, right?
And then it can be more urgent and
Yeah,
responsive
yeah,
to.
yeah.
And I'm thinking like maybe you guys could obviously talk with staff and figure out what the bottlenecks are and the challenges are. We've obviously talked to the community and continue to talk to the community, as well as maybe look at other agencies and see if they're facing the same problems, what they've done. I think Commissioner Way, you mentioned looking at other catalogs from other cities.
Yeah.
that You'd seen different programs, offices, so things like that could be included as part of the work plan.
So is there past precedents of this process, Darren, who, any attempt to increase the program for Enjoy catalog? I didn't realize the program already existed in 1999.
Yes, definitely among staff. I'm not aware of in collaboration with the Parks and Rec Commission, but I know staff has. And I know staff has looked at other agencies and said, if a given program is already being offered for our broader community at the YMCA, for example, and
Yeah.
we don't have the capacity at it, perhaps that's best left to that other agency to provide. We focus on what we do best and have capacity for example. But I don't know if we've gone to quite the depth that we're proposing now. And it seems to make sense to me as a good thing to look into.
Fantastic. Yeah. I just met a CEO of YMCA like a few days ago. So I was having a conversation how we collaborate. If there's existing relationship, that'd be great to leverage that.
So Darren, do you have a staff perspective on refocusing this on an Enjoy catalog review? Based on the last comment you made in terms of considering the Enjoy catalog, or the comment in terms of the need to consider all resources within the
Yeah.
city, that kind of makes me think maybe this should stay on the surface, it should stay focused on a recreation program review. And you can decide that that's going to be predominantly Enjoy catalog, but it doesn't limit you to Enjoy catalog. But in terms of the usefulness for the city and the potential for success and efficient use of commission and staff time.
Yeah, so that specific question of should it be just limited to Enjoy or look broader, I would recommend broader. And then, for sure you would look at the Enjoy catalog as your main area of focus. And then there might be tangential related areas that make a lot of sense to incorporate and others that perhaps don't. But leaving it a little more broad makes sense to me.
Mm. So would this like a similar phase 1, phase 2 issue? Phase 1 look into Enjoy catalog, phase 2 look into the broader picture.
My perspective is you could do both at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The ones outside the Enjoy aren't that numerous.
Okay, got it.
And the second part of my question was the usefulness for staff and the ability for staff to be able to contribute the time to support this.
I anticipate this one, I took out the word low out of the staff resources needed and made it moderate because I think this is going to be require quite a bit of time actually. And not necessarily just my group, this will be recreation staff and maybe even other parts of CSD pulled into this one. So I think it's going to take a fair amount of staff time, but I do think it's worth doing, especially when we've got lots of our community uncertain of why we can't offer things, why the waits, and a fresh analysis into that. Even if we had answers in the past, maybe it just bears reinvestigation and coming up with fresh answers, and maybe we find new ways.
So when you say the fact that you changed it to moderate, are you sort of assuming that a lot of that data doesn't exist, or there hasn't been an ongoing process already in place to try and, I guess, expand the program or look to make sure the right programs are being offered and that, because I suspect that there are other communities, but that doesn't necessarily, it sounds like Palo Alto has probably the best program going, and that's why you have kind of the saturation that we have.
Yeah. I think there has been ongoing assessment by staff on a lot of these, but to do it systematically and holistically, like
Yeah.
Also suggests that the master plan includes a lot of specific directives in terms of annual and regular reviews of programs, community outreach for feedback in terms of the programs and things like that, that I'm sure staff is doing to some degree, but the holistic approach to this is something that the broader master plan.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is that something that at some point that we, I guess, in the Parks and Rec would be able to sort of, let's say after the summer is over, to and maybe the ad hoc that has this would provide kind of the statistics, I guess, on how many programs there were, how many people were enrolled in those programs, what was the wait list of people trying to get in, and you don't probably, you have a wait list of people who are waiting to see if other folks drop out, but you also have people who just go to the door and say, well, it's not worth the time, right? They go somewhere else. So I don't know if that's something that would be possible to be presented to the PRC, and then, but maybe it comes out of the ad hoc.
I envision that being something that the ad hoc condenses into a report, and certainly something staff can contribute to and help provide.
So is there, I'm not really savvy technology. So on the website of Enjoy, when people subscribe, do you generate a data automatically? How many people subscribe? How many people got rejected?
Yeah, I believe I'm a little less involved in that personally,
Okay.
so I don't have all the answers. I just know throughout every quarter, they'll report out how many people are on wait
Okay.
lists. So I know they're getting that, and I'm almost assured that it's coming from the online program that we use.
Right,
I think we're getting into the details of the exploration of the ad hoc we
Right.
need to work on, and we need to refocus back. So we
okay,
can get out
got
of
it, yeah,
the
yeah,
time limit.
yes, sure, yeah, sure.
So I guess the question is, if you're, I think it's quite reasonable to do a review of existing recreation programs
Mhm.
and to focus on identifying some gaps in the Enjoy catalog with a limited focus. Is it reasonable to include the categorization component, which is outlined in this already? I think identifying the gaps could come after the review, the secondary part of the review. So is the ad hoc looking? Is it reasonable for the ad hoc to take on the categorization of the offerings as specified here right now, in conjunction with the as part of the Enjoy review? Do we think this is straightforward enough? This would be useful and not duplicitous, and something that would become that the master plan ad hoc would change the directive of. And is it something that the existing ad hoc can do as part of the process in reviewing and identifying gaps?
Yeah, with the
and
staff help,
solutions?
I think we can do that, right? Yeah, I think we do need staff's help in terms of data analysis, etc. We do need to sit down, have a meeting to see what is already there.
So for the high and low priority items, is it reasonable to keep work with staff to assess current program offerings? And current city program offerings and those of neighboring agencies. And then current city program offerings. I'm trying to get it to say city and neighboring. The neighboring agency review as part of this. And then as a lower priority item to identify gaps and potential. I think it'd be clear to say identify programming gaps and potential solutions. Including new Enjoy catalog offerings. Programming has 2 M's, I believe. Is that consistent with what the ad hoc was thinking they were signing up for?
Yeah,
and
I
willing
think
to commit their
that's-
time on?
Yes, but I still think it's important to hear from residents.
Okay.
How do we normally go about it? How do we go to reach out to the community? Survey, okay, so is it staff help us to do a survey?
Surveys are an option. Yeah,
Okay.
surveys are certainly one way.
Okay,
Maybe even program participants, real focused email outreach, front desk at community centers
okay.
are different possibilities.
So should we put in a high priority of community survey, community outreach?
I'm concerned that might be overlapping what the master plan ad hoc might be.
Because you would be doing
Recommending.
community outreach anyway.
Well, I think in a bigger picture that we're going to need to look at the different types of community outreach and feedback that we need to do for the master plan as a whole.
That's true, yeah, yeah.
But that's not to say there might not be a way to include some community outreach, but I think that has a lot of complexity and staff impact. Mandy, what do you think?
Yes, I mean, sorry, I can see both ways, but just, I mean, in terms of a survey, but I do think that maybe you could change the high priority to work with the community and staff to assess the current program offerings, just to leave some flexibility in terms of as needed community engagement efforts. Is that?
We don't want to exclude the community, but and certainly we need community feedback, but I don't.
Done in coordination.
Yeah, I think it's the timing and the coordination, right? Yeah, yeah.
I'm concerned about biting off more than you can accomplish.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's
Agreed.
and that staff can support you with.
Yeah, yeah.
And when we're surveying the community, we want to make sure we're surveying it's productive survey and we're getting information we're looking for. That's not straightforward.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're looking at not including any of the previous block. We need to take another look at measure of success. Report on existing program offerings. Successes and shortcomings of existing program offerings. that's too specific. Challenges, thank you.
Yeah, I think challenge is a great word. Yeah.
Thank you, Darren.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
You won't need more people on this.
Is that final outcome to recommend like adjustments to the catalog or the program? Is that what the end goal for this one is?
So second measure could be identify new, potential new program offerings. That's keeping it realistic. Can we get them into the Enjoy catalog this year? Hopefully, but maybe.
Yeah, I
not. It
think
depends
could
on
be
the timing of things.
2024. Yeah.
I suppose. I think it's going to be great to start digging in and working with staff to understand what it takes to get new Enjoy catalog programs offered. I mean, it's easy to wave a hand and say, wouldn't it be great to
Yeah.
do all these things and
That's true, yeah.
understanding
Yeah.
the nitty gritty of why
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
why
Yeah.
this isn't so
Yeah,
easy
yeah,
as
yeah.
it appears. And
Yeah, we don't want to be
and
overbearing.
perhaps to be able to figure out how to better communicate to the community
That's true.
the complexity of it and the challenges
Yeah.
for better appreciation overall. I came up with program 1H1 that's related to one cultural diversity and programming. That's policy 1.1. Policy 1.H is incorporate cultural diversity in projects and programs to encourage and enhance citizen participation. 1H1 is conduct a survey at least every 2 years of cultural groups to identify gaps, barriers to access, preferred design, and awareness in recreation program. This is the kind of stuff that's going to come directly out of the master plan review and say,
Yeah, yeah.
We need to figure out how to do a little better.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. Should we move on?
Did we get to 100% on this, the goal here?
The beneficial impacts now
Yeah.
don't reflect
yep, so-
the work plan, and the title is, the goal is also not completely there.
Review existing recreation programs and categorize offerings. Maybe it's comma, categorize.
Yeah.
And assess or and review neighboring agencies. Review program offerings of neighboring agencies. Okay, beneficial impacts. Something about using data to understand to better understand
So, the demand of the or need or demand of the community for,
You can understand the needs
yeah,
that you understand
of the
the
community.
needs and challenges. Needs, challenges, gaps in existing programming for our community.
Yeah, that sounds good for community, yeah.
Programming to, what was that? Our community?
In programming for our community. Use
To understand the needs,
Or-
challenges, and
or-
gaps in existing programming.
compile data to understand. Sounds pretty generic machine-like.
Maybe existing program for our diverse community, because I also heard from, Asian community, how hard it is for them to get on programs, say, learn pickleball, etc.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great, thanks so much.
We have one more item to go through, and we should have started it sooner because Anne's on a little bit of a clock this evening. Right, Wellness Center, Jim. Would like to speak briefly on this before we jump into the cleanup, into approving this. Or does it speak for itself? Okay, comments? About A, Palo Alto Recreation Wellness Center instead of B on a new.
Pardon me, can you say that again?
For the top item,
Uh-huh.
work with staff to facilitate progress on A instead of the, and is it new?
Sure.
Yeah, on a new. Beneficial impacts,
You want to take the first line out, Wellness Center, Jim?
Take the first line out of,
it's kind of a title that most of the other work plan items have, kind of.
And it should probably be Recreation Wellness Center.
Recreation Wellness Center. Slash gym or just recreation?
Hmm?
Slash gym or just recreation
No
wellness?
slash, no
Okay.
slash Jim.
Is that our new terminology, recreation
Recreation.
wellness center?
Way back, yeah.
We got-
Recreation Wellness Center. AKA Jim, but. it's the
Recreation
appropriate
wellness,
word.
thank you. Uh, So under beneficial impacts, is this a park facility or is it recreation and wellness?
Yeah, it should. I don't know where the park came from, actually.
Recreation and wellness facility? Yeah. Improve or positively impact the health and welfare. The impact, the benefit is the improve the health and welfare of current and future generations. Great. Community engagement, we need to develop that a little bit more to be a benefit. Increased community engagement and gathering center? Or?
A facility does not in itself improve health. It provides an opportunities for people to improve their own health by going to the facility.
Okay, so recreation and wellness facilities provide opportunities to
Have a healthy and
they provide,
fun lifestyle, I don't know.
provide opportunities for improved health and welfare.
Health and recreation.
Health and wellness? No, get that. Right? Yeah, it is.
For active and healthy recreation. Instead of improve the healthy. And maybe you want the word social in there, I'm not sure, because it creates a social.
Yep. Maybe social is part of the second item with the community engagement.
Okay,
I would take it.
Okay,
Take improved out, is that what you said?
I mean, I think it's the way to reach recreation and wellness. Departments.
recreation and wellness
Provide
facility.
opportunities.
Okay.
How about just saying provide indoor recreation space for the health and welfare of current and future residents?
I like active and healthy.
Cut out
If you
the
wanted, if you
first
wanted to
part.
keep, if you wanted to keep active and healthy, we could put active and healthy recreation in front of opportunities. That's slow better.
Active and healthy recreational opportunities.
Recreation opportunities for current and future generations, but that's not incorporating what Ann was just suggesting.
I'm not sure we need the generations, it's just there.
I think it's
Good for everybody.
But I think the fact that you're building something that is going to have a lifetime, I think it's,
Okay,
I think it adds. And then it increase social, the social engagement and well-being. Okay. FY24. So in terms of resources, should we be adding outside community, should outside community resources be included here, Darren? Is this asking about staff time and finance?
I think it's okay to list if we're anticipate drawing down on other resources.
Let's lead with moderate staff time.
Yeah. Should be moderate, probably.
Draw upon professional expertise. That's a separate item, I think. or utilize. Draw upon is better or not. We don't need that part. Stakeholder engagement is not a resource. Something that, or is
Well,
it?
I think it would be sort of be part of the utilizing professional expertise in our community. I mean,
Okay.
so
It's included.
I think it's included.
Yeah.
Yes. You agree with that, Ann?
I'm sorry, say it again.
No, as far as removing the stakeholder engagement, I mean, I think it's included in what we're utilizing professional expertise for the community, and working with the Friends of Palo Alto Recreational Wellness Center. So we don't necessarily,
It's fine.
Okay, so for the high priority action, state aspects of.
I think that was the boilerplate.
Yeah.
A little later. So what was the council directive?
So what that means is the council directed back in March of 2022 that the staff working with the commission should answer 6 questions. Should answer 6 questions. And that's what the staff is working on right now, and the ad hoc would like to support that. So
Okay, and so is all of this going to be achieved within the next 12 months?
yes, supposedly, the questions that the council asked the staff to answer. They're,
So could we be more specific in terms of with this item then? So
there's
address,
the council motion is in there.
I understand, but
Oh, okay.
but just in terms of the action,
Oh, I see
the
what you're
actions
saying.
to address address the 6 questions related to a recreation wellness center.
Yeah, can we get them up? Because I don't have them in my, okay.
I mean, the reason for including, we did include it as part of. We did include it as part of the priority. But I mean, if you wanted to spell it out as part of this, then.
So the hot link didn't transfer in the
Yeah.
PDF that I have.
Yeah, I thought we had spelled it out when we submitted it, so.
Yeah.
But it went, I guess it went away. I have it if you want to write it, somebody, it's right here. Gym features, cost estimates, funding timeline, demand assessment.
Sorry,
Priority of
Commissioner Cruz,
projects.
I'm much slower than that.
Are you?
Come on, Derek.
Why, Darren?
I
You do
don't
so
know.
well. Okay, where are you?
I'm at conduct public outreach.
Public outreach. Okay, location. Siting,
Okay.
gym features, cost estimates, funding timeline, demand assessment, priority of projects, and the PRC to also investigate fundraising.
So is there supposed to be a parentheses after public outreach? It's not on,
Not on this list.
okay. And citing should be spelled differently. No GH. We,
I would also propose indenting the, because it's a subset under the implement council directives, right?
I think at the end of this, you could just say as directed by city council.
Oh,
And the other priority, but it's always, it's actually in the measure of success is the letter, getting to a letter of intent.
And is that something that you expect to achieve in the next 12 months?
I sure hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was suggested at one of our recent meetings.
Okay.
Um,
So is this a high priority or is this we put on a lower priority just to fill up both boxes?
So this list that we just did is a high priority.
Right?
And then the measure of success is the letter of intent and also the answers to the list that Darren just typed. So those two things would be the measure of success.
right, but developing or achieving a letter of intent, or whatever the action verb is, that's one of the priorities as well. And the measure of success is that you get the letter of intent. So what is the action required to get a letter of intent?
We were told that the city staff was gonna put it together based on a model of the Junior Museum, letter of intent with the city.
Okay, so the letter of intent is from city council?
No, yes, it would be. It's a letter like we have for the first T.
Okay,
It's the best way to say it.
so the action is to recommend a letter of intent
You could say that.
from the city. You can answer that, Ann.
What?
The letter of intent, that letter of intent is from the city addressing to whom? To,
To whom?
yeah,
So it would be a letter that, as I understand it, it would be a letter that the city staff had initiated that would go to the council, that the council could then sign, that
Oh, I
would
see.
allow the Friends to go ahead and fundraise after all of these questions have been answered.
I see, okay.
And
So
that's the model that was used, as we understand it, for the Junior Museum
I see.
fundraising.
got it, thanks.
So the lower priority item then is to recommend a letter of intent for a new
Yeah.
recreation wellness center. Should we recommend a city letter of intent or a letter of intent from the city? I think it'd be useful to clarify this.
It could be recommend that city council approve a letter of intent for a new recreation center.
doesn't,
Okay, so recommend approval of a letter of intent.
wait a minute, doesn't the letter of intent would come from, it's to the city council, is that correct?
No, it's city council is creating the letter
Oh,
of intent. And this
Oh, okay.
is used by the Recreation Foundation to attract money, to attract developers.
Good.
Yeah, essentially, the city council is approving the list of the things that Darren just wrote to give the Friends of the Recreation Wellness Center the opportunity to go out and raise money for a project.
Okay, so back on the high priority, we're conduct public outreach, location citing that doesn't follow the same syntax. So these are the answers that you're looking for, or the actions that need to occur is one, conduct public outreach, determine a location, citing
Gym features.
gym features. So
Cost estimates.
so it's conduct public outreach and determine or develop or specify, recommend.
Well, could you just not say conduct public outreach and provide information on the following? A list from there.
Are you doing more than providing information on these? Making a
Or answer the
recommendation?
questions,
I'm sorry?
or answer the questions. It's,
I mean, answering the question is providing a recommendation, isn't it?
mhm.
So just say conduct public outreach and provide and recommend location citing, gym features.
So is the public outreach intended to inform, or the recommendations is to let the public know what was selected? Which way is it going?
What's, for me, it's whatever the council wanted the staff and the commission to do in terms of public outreach, which in the past had been the survey and the public meetings. And then there was a request for the staff and the commission citing the gym features, the cost, the funding timeline, and the demand assessment. And then the priority of the project, the priority of projects had to do with the staff looking at all of their different capital projects and saying, what's going to get priority here? And that was really a staff request. And then
So I don't understand what the public, so is public outreach complete? Is it done or is it
Oh, I
more?
don't think it's done at all.
So, okay, so
Excuse me, Mandy, did you research?
I think the motion's slightly different, Darren. To conduct public outreach on a new gym. And then it was comma, including location, citing,
okay, that
those
makes
things.
sense.
And
That's
then see funding timeline, prioritization of projects. Then it was after priority, sorry. Including location, citing, gym features, cost estimates, funding timeline, demand assessment, and prioritization of projects, period. PRC to also investigate fundraising. That was the motion.
So the outreach is to see where the public think is about the location, citing, all this stuff, gym features and so on. Okay.
You could say, and then just say, fix the prioritization spelling. Projects, comma, you'd say, and investigate funding as directed by city council. maybe investigate funding and conduct public outreach. Right?
Fundraising.
Maybe investigate fundraising.
At the very beginning of a sentence.
Sure. Investigate fundraising. Or, sorry, maybe it's better just to say, start with, as directed by city council, that public outreach, blah, 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 and another item. Investigate fundraising. Colon, next line. Resolution of projects, line return. Investigate projects. So after, lead all the way back to projects. Line return. Investigate projects. And, conduct public outreach, investigate funding for the bulleted items. That's about it.
I'm not following that.
So the first line is going to be as directed by city council.
Yeah.
So delete everything above that.
Sorry.
First line will be as directed by city council, a colon, and then don't put a bullet on as directed by city council. Remove the bullet.
Do you want to keep the
And then the next two items could be bulleted. And just formatted better later.
Are you suggesting bulleting each of them?
No,
Okay,
2 bullets.
gotcha.
Okay. Lower. Okay, then the measures of success are providing feedback to city council as directed. Providing feedback on a new recreation wellness center. That's our, all right, as directed. Recommendation for a letter of intent. It's the second item.
On a what was that, providing feedback to city council on a recommendation?
No, the first, providing feedback is the first item, which is the action of the high priority. And the second measure of success is, I'm not sure how it's different than the stated lower priority. Just recommendation for a letter of intent. LOI.
Do you want the council motion linked?
Under the council directed policy update, yes. that bottom right box? Seems like that would make sense to do it there. Although it might beg the question of why other council motions may not be linked.
Mm.
Policy 5G on the box above that applies. And it's also a major project listed in chapter 5. Under beneficial impacts, increased social engagements should be preceded by a line return. Other comments? Is there any further review and questions of any of the other work plan items? Or are we ready for a motion to approve the work plan?
Chair, do you want to do the
The
number?
order, right? Yes. You want to put rec program review second?
A suggested order.
Okay.
Master plan first, I think we agreed on. The recreation program overview is second. Then the next two would be the council directed ones, so the wellness center and the e-bike. So wellness center would go to 3. E-bike would go to 4. I have grant as 7, so the last one. And then playing fields and parks before then. So parks I have as 6, parks dedication.
Park dedication was 6, you said?
As 6 and playing fields as 5 was just a proposed order. We can shift.
I'm supportive.
Great.
Would anybody like to recommend rearranging further? Felt like a safe offer. Thank you. Appreciate it. Darren, any comments? Do we have a motion to approve the work plan? Or is there further discussion or recommendation? I will make a motion to recommend the work plan, including everything that we have in the document with the cleanups, with cleanups as specified, and also including the prior year accomplishments. We have a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Cribs. Lon, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Chair. Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Vice Chair Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Cribs,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Kleinhaus,
Yes.
Commissioner Oche,
Yes, please.
Commissioner Wei.
Yes,
Chair, that's a 7-0 vote.
Thank you. That's great. Let's move on to the next business item, which is ad hoc committees and liaison updates. We know that all of the ad hoc committees have met. Thank you for your great work in getting things together for a work plan. It took quite a while to get the work plans out, but there was a lot of interesting discussion, and it's great to feel the passion and interest that was in the room this evening as we discussed the details of it. But I think some of the discussions were very productive and useful, and particularly as we're talking about things as a group, kind of helping steer the ad hocs in the right direction as they work on a subgroup to kind of better feel where the whole commission is coming from and help to go in the right direction. Any specific ad hoc updates anybody would like to add right now, or liaison updates?
Just about the skate park, Darren made a nice presentation about the skate park as part of the staff report. But Sam has also sent around, or at least sent to me and to you, some drawings that are pretty exciting that he did with his master designer. And I was hopeful that we could share those with the commission. Darren, is that appropriate right now, or?
I think so. Yeah, I don't see a problem with that.
It's pretty exciting to see what the skaters have talked about. And there's a couple of things that they have to do before they can move forward, but they're close to having something.
Thank you. And I just want to check real quick and make sure there's no members of the public looking to speak. That is the case. And Lama, I'm going to ask if, Lama or Darren, I'm going to ask if in a moment you could put up the list of liaison and the ad hoc and liaison assignments, just to give you a little. Okay. There was a little bit, a minor update on the on park dedication, or Darren shared some information of a community member suggesting a potential area to dedicate as a park, a strip of land near San Antonio and Alma. So that's something that the park dedication ad hoc group will look into as part of our list. Also updating here, Commissioner Cribbs is asked to be part of the recreation or the wellness center gym ad hoc committee, and perhaps we would like to rename the ad hoc committee to be Recreation Wellness Center. So we'll go ahead and do all those, make those changes. So Wellness Center gym will become Recreation Wellness Center. And Commissioner Cribbs will join the ad hoc. And Commissioner Oche has requested to reduce her workload a bit and drop off of the grant opportunities ad hoc. Is that correct, Commissioner Oche? And that is currently a 3-person ad hoc, and in discussing in setting up the outline, setting up the ad hoc, we outline that as a 2-person ad hoc, or potentially 3 people. So I'm okay with that. Fine with
I'm
that.
sorry, Chair, which ad hoc was that?
The grant opportunities ad hoc.
Thank you.
Yes. And now's a really good time to finalize all of our ad hoc and liaison assignments as roles as we look to move forward with our work this year. Does anybody have any other final thoughts of something, an ad hoc, a 2-person ad hoc that they really want to join and participate in, or any other second thoughts on anything? We'll look to make these final at this point, moving forward. Commissioner Oche.
Is there a limit to how many you can be in? A minimum?
The only limit is your time and
No,
personal
the minimum.
resources. No, is there something else you'd like to participate in? Okay, yes. A minimum, sorry. The minimum is to make sure that the commission has everything covered. Okay, does anyone have any other ad hoc or liaison business to discuss? Let's move on then to Commissioner Board Member questions, comments, announcements, and future agenda items. Any announcements or comments, questions from commission members? Darren, let's talk about next month's agenda.
Thanks, Chair. We had the tree protection ordinance as a possibility.
That seems like probably not so likely in that I think that city council is going to be having a presentation on a tree protection ordinance next month, but we can put it on the maybe list.
And then we also talked about the possible park dedication of the Greer site, 2850 West Bay Shore easement. That's tentative.
Yes. Anything else?
Nothing that I'd have ready for next month.
There was some park, was there a park improvement?
A CIP, a
CIP?
park improvement ordinance?
Something to consider?
Not that I can think of at the moment.
Okay, do any commission members have any specific requests? What about the Foothills update? I thought that was on.
The improvement plan won't be ready by next month. It is being worked on, but I don't think it'll be ready.
Okay, we were looking to get a general update on the nature preserve from the managing ranger.
We could separate it. We had talked before about trying to lump it all together as one, and that could be an option, that we separate the improvement plan details and bring that when it's ready. And in the interim, we talk about visitation, and Mike Warner, the supervising ranger, could introduce himself and help answer questions. That could be an option.
Yeah, we can talk about that based on how far out we think the Foothills improvement plan will be.
What's the scope of the improvement plan? How do we have any visibility or influence on the scope?
The CIP's already been submitted, so not too much at this point to alter what is the main focus, which is primarily a pedestrian pathway. These are all improvements aimed at having addressed the increase in visitation and some of the issues that became apparent that the original design of the park wasn't holding up anymore. So not having a pedestrian pathway, people had to walk on the road is one. Fencing in key areas to protect the habitat from people that were encroaching into areas. Over time, some of that has diminished, but we still need it in several areas where the habitat is at risk of being trampled. We have temporary measures in place, but this would get permanent split rail fencing in there and some signage, and then parking lot improvements.
What does that mean?
Say again?
What does that mean, parking lot improvement?
There's areas where the parking is ill-defined and it's just sort of a bulbous pullout with no lines on where people should park, where they shouldn't, that kind of thing. So clarity, definition. With that would come some speed bumps to slow people down in key areas and a couple crosswalks to move people from one side of the road where we'd have this new pedestrian pathway to the other, where it would switch sides. Easier to show in a plan than it is to describe verbally right now.
And I think some of the, what, in one area, part of the parking, the edge of the parking lot will become the pedestrian pathway and the parking lot will shift a bit.
Right.
Where there's more vertical space for parking than is necessary.
Will that add parking?
No, I think the end result is net neutral.
And
Would it be useful? It's been 2 years since the Recreation Foundation and the Friends of the Parks have come to talk to us about their programs. I don't know whether
we'll look into
they
that.
would be ready or not, but it would be maybe good for them to come back since we're talking about grants and fundraising and all of that. And along those lines, grassroots ecology is doing some really wonderful things. So maybe it'd be fun to hear from them or useful to hear
They
from them.
talked to us recently.
It was about a year ago that Grassroots was here.
So about a month ago, I went on Los Trancos on the backside and took some pictures and put them on iNaturalist and got a response from the California Natural Data, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife to add some of the pictures, especially one that was, I guess, an endangered species. But it's on the backside and there's so many weeds there. Is there any effort to get back and remove some of the oats and other invasive species there?
So I think we're kind of getting,
I know, but
getting
this
a
is,
bit beyond trying to sort out.
well, maybe we can get
agenda
an
items.
update on where is work done, not only like where the high impact is, but also in the back.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing that. You want an update
I
on,
would like to know what the city is doing in the backside, like on Los Trancos in the less frequented areas.
Maybe you can send Darren an email with a more detailed request to make sure he's able to follow up on the information you're looking for.
Okay.
And Ann will look into the foundations. I've got a spreadsheet of potential agenda items, but we'll look to get them in this next calendar year, I think. Anyone else? Okay, let's, if there's nothing else, then I will call this meeting to adjourn. Thank you, everyone.